Welcome, dear listener, to a gentle journey through time where the stillness of your surroundings meets the distant murmur of an ancient world. Imagine yourself nestled in the soft embrace of your bed as the shadows lengthen, ready to guide your mind toward tranquil sleep. Tonight, we will wander along the banks of the Euphrates, tracing the footsteps of those who lived thousands of years before us in a landscape both alien and familiar. Let your breath find its natural rhythm as we immerse ourselves in the cadence of daily life in magnificent Mesopotamia. Each whispered detail, from the subtle brush of reed thatch to the faint flow of water in hidden channels, will lull your senses into calm observation. Our words will flow steadily, unhurried, so that your thoughts may drift like ripples on still water. There is no rush here, only the measured heartbeat of history speaking softly. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy and your mind to wander as you follow our gentle narration. Rest assured, this voyage is safe and serene, and if you do not yet slip into slumber, simply listen and let the past cradle you to rest. Imagine yourself stirring before dawn, the soft glow of the rising sun just brushing the tops of the canal reeds outside your hut. The charcoal embers in your modest hearth have died to a warm ember glow that beckons you to rise. You push aside the woven reed mat and feel the cool, damp earth beneath your bare feet, a gentle reminder of the river's presence. The air carries the muted scent of barley husks and the distant murmur of water flowing through unseen channels. A constant struggle threads through every breath as each moment demands both care and effort to sustain life. Yet in this stillness, the rhythm of their lives unfolds in soft, measured steps, guiding you toward your morning work. You gather clay bricks stacked at the hut's corner with practiced hands, their sun-baked surfaces warm to the touch. The weight of each brick is familiar, a part of the day's chore that shapes both body and purpose. With each lift, your muscles respond with a quiet strength, echoing the resilience woven into the fabric of their community. The path to the communal kiln lies across the courtyard, where children's laughter once danced, but now yields to the hush of early labor. You pause for a moment, imagining yourself in the cool shade of a date palm, waiting for the world to fully awaken. The scent of warming mud mingles with the dry sweetness of dates left from yesterday's market. The kiln master nods as you approach, his fingers already dusted in the fine earthen powder. Together you slide the bricks onto a low wooden cart, its wheels groaning lightly as they bear the day's promise. The rhythm of their lives pulses in the steady creak of wood and the gentle weight drifting beneath you. At each turn, grains of dust lift and settle softly, coating your skin in a fine, warm cloak. By your side, co-workers share a silent camaraderie, bound by the shared task and the rising sun. There is comfort in this repetition, a lullaby of labor that soothes the mind even as it toils the body. Once the bricks are loaded, you return to your hut to fetch the quernstone for barley grinding. Inside, the familiar scent of dried reeds and sun-warmed mud brick greets you like an old friend. You pour a measure of golden barley onto the smooth stone surface, its grains glinting faintly in the morning light. With steady hands, you guide the upper stone in gentle circles, the soft rasp of grain against stone becoming a meditative chant. Each turn of the quern releases a whisper of fragrance, earthy and sweet, that drifts through the small enclosure. Imagine yourself there, immersed in the steady pulse of work, where every rotation is a note in the daily hymn. Your arms move in a practiced rhythm, the constant struggle transformed into a soothing cycle of motion. As the barley becomes fine flour, you pause to feel its texture between your fingers, the cool powder bright against your skin. It is in these small tactile moments that the heartbeat of ancient life becomes most vivid. Outside, the bazaar begins to stir, a mosaic of stalls and voices that will soon overflow the narrow lanes. But for now, the hush of dawn offers a brief respite before the day's bustle. Imagine yourself wandering through these quiet pathways, the ground still cool beneath your sandals. Faint echoes of merchants sorting their wares drift from nearby stalls, muffled by distance and the lingering calm. In the soft light, the fish sauce barrels stand still, their wooden lids closed against the rising heat. The scent of fermenting fish is present yet restrained, a muted promise of stronger aromas to come. Salted date vendors begin to arrange their goods, the glossy fruit catching glimmers of dawn. You inhale deeply, savoring the sweet, resinous fragrance that hints at both nourishment and indulgence. The rhythm of their lives here is about to shift, but for a moment you simply observe, a silent participant in the day's first breaths. Returning to the grain temple, you clutch your clay ration token tightly in one hand. The stone threshold bears ancient carvings that whisper of past offerings and divine transaction. Inside the cool hall, columns rise like silent sentinels, their carved capitals softened by centuries of dust. The scent of incense drifts from distant braziers, mingling with the faint sweetness of pressed oil. You lower your shoulders and step forward, the token's weight a reminder of the precarious balance between sustenance and obligation. A temple official regards you with a reserved gaze, his robes crisp and his posture exact. In hushed tones, you plead your share of barley, weaving your need with respectful deference. Each word is measured, each pause deliberate, as though you speak in the same careful rhythm that guides your daily chores. There is no drama here, only the steady hum of ritual and the quiet insistence of hunger. Emerging from the temple, sack of grain balanced against your hip, you step back into the rising sun. The rays now reach over the rooftops, casting long, warm patterns across the mud brick walls. Imagine yourself carrying the weight of tomorrow's meals in each handful of grain, the future's promise held in simple kernels. The constant struggle of survival feels tangible in the warmth against your back and the grains shifting in the sack. Yet there is beauty in these small victories. The taste of fresh barley bread, the glint of sunlight on water channels. You follow the narrow path toward the hut, mindful of each scuff of sandal on hard earth. A gentle breeze stirs the reeds overhead, carrying the soft whisper of the river beyond sight. The world feels alive, yet calm, as if the day itself breathes in sync with your own steady inhalations. In moments like this, the rhythm of their lives resonates as a gentle lullaby against the backdrop of labor. With hearth rekindled, you sift the flour and water to form a simple dough. The cool grains cling to your palms as you knead, the texture slightly gritty, yet comforting. A faint pulse of warmth rises from the hearthstones, reaching your toes and coaxing life back into chilled limbs. Imagine yourself shaping the loaves by hand, each fold and press a small prayer for tomorrow's strength. The dough rests, and you take a moment to pause, inhaling deeply the mingled scents of malt and smoke. A soft glow filters through the reed walls, dancing across shadowed corners of your simple home. You reflect on the unseen hands that built these walls, the layers of reed and clay pressed by countless ancestors. The solitary hush of morning allows these thoughts to flow freely, like water filling hidden canals. Each small act, from grinding to baking, weaves you into the tapestry of an age-old existence. Your next task leads you to the courtyard well, its stone rim cool beneath the sun's growing warmth. The well's bucket dips into ink-dark water, the faint splash echoing in the calm air. Imagine yourself drawing water that will quench thirst, cook meals, and baptize flour into bread. The liquid feels crisp and alive, a clear gift amid the dry, sun-baked lands. As you lift the bucket and settle back, droplets spill and catch gleams of dawn light. Each bead of falling water is a tiny drumbeat in the steady anthem of ancient routine. You gaze at the flowing river beyond the city walls, its surface shimmering like scattered jewels. The sound of distant boats drifting downstream offers a soft accompaniment to your steady breath. In this moment, the constant struggle and the gentle lullaby of life blend into one graceful harmony. You return to your hut with water and bread, your shoulders eased by the rhythm you've established. The day's first meal begins with simple sustenance, a dusting of salt on warm bread and a sip of cool water. Imagine yourself eating in silence, every bite a testament to the toil of early morning labor. The flavors are mild yet profound, speaking of earth and sky and human perseverance. As you chew, the distant toll of a temple bell reminds you of life beyond your routine. The bell's low tone resonates through the crisp air, a gentle summons to the wider world of the city. Yet here, in your hut, time moves at the pace you set, guided by your breath and steady hands. The humble meal nourishes both body and spirit, anchoring you in the waking day. The opening chapter of your morning has drawn to a close, leaving you poised for whatever tasks lie ahead. Imagine yourself stepping out again into the bustling heart of the city after your simple morning meal. The sun has risen higher now, and its warmth grows more insistent across the flat rooftops. You follow the narrow alley that leads to the bazaar, its path worn smooth by countless feet. The gentle hum of the city rises with each step, a soft murmur that envelops you like a blanket. Stalls bristle with fresh goods, and the vibrant tapestry of colors unfolds before your eyes. Traders lean over woven mats laden with bowls of salted fish, the glint of oil catching the sunlight. A faint tang of brine drifts through the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of sun-ripened dates. Imagine yourself pausing at a date vendor's stall, running your fingers along the glossy fruit. Your touch dislodges a faint dusting of sand from the market floor, a reminder of the city's constant movement. Nearby, a fish sauce barrel stands open, its pungent scent settling into the warm breeze. You breathe deeply, allowing the contrast of smells to ground you in this foreign, yet oddly comforting world. The rhythm of their lives pulses in the ebb and flow of haggling voices and shifting wares. A merchant calls out in a lilting accent, extolling the fine quality of his leather sandals. His voice rises and falls like a gentle tide, inviting you to linger a moment longer. In the stall beside his, clay vessels of various shapes are arranged in careful rows. Each pot bears the faint imprint of the artisan's hand, a swirl and press that tells its own story. Imagine yourself selecting a pot for water storage, its curved lip cool under your palm. The weight of tradition anchors the clay to your fingers, connecting you to a lineage of craftsmen. As you move onward, the crowd thickens, bodies brushing in a silent dance of need and exchange. You navigate the narrow lanes with practiced ease, your every step mindful and deliberate. The ground beneath your sandals is rough with crushed shell and fine mud, a soft mosaic of the land. A child darts past, laughing as he chases a small goat tethered to a wooden post. The bleat of the animal and the peal of laughter weave into the city's song. For a moment, you pause, letting the gentle echo of childhood fill your senses. Then you continue, drawn toward a stall where women sit on low stools, weaving reed mats. Their hands move in a soothing rhythm, threads crossing and folding in precise order. Imagine yourself resting here for a brief respite, feeling the cool shade of a palm frond overhead. The reed fibers slip between your fingers, rough yet yielding to the gentle pressure of your grip. A woman offers you a small taste of pomegranate seeds, their ruby flesh bursting with tart sweetness. Each seed is a tiny jewel, reminding you of the simple pleasures woven into daily existence. The gentle pulse of this moment blends work and rest in a seamless flow. Beyond the mats, the distant clatter of a scribe's stylus on clay tablets adds a faint echo to the soundscape. The rhythm of their lives resonates in the composed sway of quills and the quiet scratch of cuneiform. You rise and make your way toward a stone arch marking the spice section of the bazaar. Mortar and pestle sets rest upon wooden counters, their surfaces darkened by years of grinding. Spices lay in small heaps, cumin, coriander, and mustard seeds offering a gentle flicker of color. You inhale slowly, allowing the warm aroma of toasted seeds to mingle with the heat of the day. Imagine yourself selecting a measure of cumin, its earthy fragrance clinging faintly to your fingers. The merchant wraps your purchase in a small cloth, tying it with meticulous care. He nods, his eyes reflecting the steady heartbeat of commerce that drives the city forward. With spices secured, you step into a quieter lane where food stalls begin to line the route. Bowls of lentil stew steam gently in clay pots, their savory scent a welcoming contrast to the sun's glare. A woman ladles a portion into a shallow dish, the liquid rippling like warm amber. She offers it to you, a gesture of charity woven into the fabric of communal life. Each spoonful warms your tongue, its texture smooth and soothing against the backdrop of dusty streets. Imagine yourself sipping the broth, feeling its gentle heat spread through your chest. Around you, patrons sit on low benches, sharing conversation and laughter in muted tones. The communal meal becomes a tapestry of shared stories and quiet reflection. You rise when the midday bell tolls, its low rumble vibrating through the corridors of stone. The sound is a reminder that the day moves inexorably forward, guided by the sun's arc. Imagine yourself returning to the river's edge, seeking relief from the sweltering heat. The water glints with silver light, and a cool breeze ripples across the surface. You dip your hands into the flowing stream, the liquid slipping past your skin like silk. Each drop carries a whisper of distant mountains and unseen springs. You fill a small clay jar and seal it with a bit of palm wax to keep it cool. The weight of the jar at your side is a constant companion as you make your way back to the courtyard. Along the way, you pass a healer's tent, where aromatic herbs hang in dried bundles. Lavender and thyme sway gently in the breeze, their fragrances drifting on the air. Imagine yourself pausing here to breathe deeply, letting the herbal scents wash over you. A healer offers you a small pouch of crushed mint for relief from the midday heat. You tuck the pouch into your tunic, grateful for this tender intersection of nature and care. The rhythm of their lives finds harmony in the balance of toil and simple tenderness. As afternoon deepens, you return to your hut to prepare for your next chore. You gather reeds for roofing repairs, their long, slender stalks bundled in neat sheaves. The tactile surface of the reeds feels cool and smooth under your fingertips. Imagine yourself climbing onto the flat roof, the coarse mud brick tiles firm beneath your sandals. With gentle strength, you weave the new thatching into place, adding layers against the sun's glare. The steady pulse of your work mingles with the distant murmur of prayers from the temple. Each reed you secure is a small act of preservation in a world built on impermanence. Below, commoners and elites move in parallel rhythms, their paths crossing yet rarely touching. You pause to look out over the city's expanse, sunlit walls blazing in soft ochre. The roofs stretch toward the horizon in a tapestry of earthen hues and glinting channels. Imagine yourself perched on this vantage point, the breeze lifting stray hairs from your forehead. The gentle hum of life below carries on, steady and reassuring as the beat of a distant drum. You descend from the roof as the day's heat peaks, returning to the cooler shelter of your home. There, you prepare thin strips of barley grain to feed a small flock of pigeons. The grains feel cool and round as they slip from your hand, a quiet offering to winged companions. The birds coo softly as they gather, their gentle sounds woven into the chorus of the afternoon. Imagine yourself watching them peck and flutter, their wings brushing the dust in silent celebration. The soft whisper of feathers against air resonates like a lullaby amid the heat. You gather the last of your tasks for the day, each chore a note in the calm melody of existence. As the sun begins its slow descent, the city's rhythm shifts toward evening. You pause at your doorway, the cool shadows lengthening across the courtyard. Imagine yourself inhaling one last breath of golden light before dusk settles in. The gentle pulse of the day's labor harmonizes with the promise of rest to come. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the steady flow of memories guide your mind. Each sensation, each small victory of the day becomes a thread in the tapestry of your ancient life. The rhythm of their lives and the murmur of the world around you create a soft lullaby. As you prepare to rest again, this chapter of daily immersion lingers like a gentle echo. Let these recollections carry you onward, held in the calm embrace of history's soft pulse. As the afternoon sun presses down, imagine yourself leaving your hut once more to tend to your remaining chores. You feel the scalding warmth radiating from the hard-packed earth beneath your sandals, reminding you of each breath you draw. The gentle hum of the city S-pulse accompanies you as you head toward the communal kiln to collect more clay bricks. The kiln appears as a dark moor against the bright sky, its outer walls stained by years of fire and soot. You grip the first brick with both hands, its rough edges pressing warmly into your palms. Each brick carries the faint echo of countless suns baked into its form. Imagine yourself shouldering the load and turning toward the site where new walls are rising. With each step, the bricks shift and settle against one another in a soft, rhythmic murmur. The weight is familiar, a constant struggle gently shaping your arms and back. A thin veil of dust rises with every footfall, coating your skin in a matte film that glitters in the waning light. The path leads you through the narrow city lanes where laborers carve stone or mix mortar. Their faces are calm, voices low, as though they are part of a slow-moving tapestry. The sun's heat is tempered by a faint whisper of water drifting from hidden canal channels below the surface. You pause to listen, catching the soft sigh of liquid trickling through unseen conduits. The sensation is reassuring, a gentle reminder of life sustained beneath the arid ground. Carving masons rest in shaded alcoves, their mallets and chisels scattered like musical instruments. Imagine yourself resting alongside them, breathing in the deep, dusty scent of carved stone. Each breath feels cool against your throat, even as beads of sweat trace paths down your back. You rise and press onward, carrying the bricks until you reach the half-finished wall. The masons accept your load with a silent nod, stacking one brick atop another in neat rows. Having delivered your share, you set the empty basket down and feel a momentary lightness in your arms. The basket's ribs press gently against your hips, a familiar discomfort that speaks of honest labor. The afternoon sun dips lower, casting slanted shadows across the city's mud brick panorama. You hear the rattle of pottery wheels in the distance, their slow rotation whispering of unseen artisans. The bazaar's edge is not far now, where merchants begin to close their fish sauce barrels for the day. The stench that was once pungent has now softened to a muted tang clinging to the warm air. Imagine yourself standing at the threshold of the spice section, where sacks of coriander and cumin already bear the dust of ages. A merchant gathers handfuls of ground spice, her palms stained a golden hue. She lifts her hand to her lips in a silent blessing before wrapping your purchased cumin in parchment. The paper rustles like a page in a bedtime story, carrying the promise of flavor into your evening meal. You move on toward the grain temple to settle a small debt accrued by your family over the month. The air here holds the subtle sweetness of stored grain, mingled with the faint sourness of parchment and seal wax. Imagine yourself slipping a small clay token to the clerk behind a low counter, the token shaped like a sheaf of barley. His expression remains unreadable as he examines the seal impression, weighing the gesture with silent calculation. Beyond the counter, piles of clay tablets record each loan, their neat columns whispering of arithmetic and obligation. You feel the pressure of debt slip from your shoulders, only to be replaced by the promise of next month's balance. The rhythm of their lives is etched into each transaction, a steady cadence of need and recompense. You bow your head and step away, the sun's warmth greeting you as you re-enter the open air. A scrawny goat wanders past, its bleating a gentle punctuation in the city's hum. Imagine yourself offering it a handful of barley chaff, the rough grains tickling your fingertips. The afternoon haze softens the edges of distant rooftops, and you wander toward a shaded courtyard where water jugs sit waiting. Each jug's surface is dimpled by skilled hands, the clay's natural ridges a comforting pattern under your palm. You lift one jug and carry it slowly back to your hut, careful not to spill a single drop. The whisper of water drips from the jug's lip as the sun warms the clay, releasing a faint, sweet aroma. Inside, you pour the water into a shallow basin and feel its coolness pool around your fingers. The feeling is like a soft exhale of relief, washing away the day's warmth in one gentle wash. Imagine yourself dipping your face into the basin, letting droplets trace the lines of your temples. Each droplet carries the memory of distant springs and mountain streams. The constant struggle seems to soften in the presence of this simple, flowing gift. You rise, the water's cool echo lingering on your skin like a soft lullaby. A light breeze stirs the reed walls of your hut, carrying the scent of cooking fires and blossoming date palms. The horizon glows in muted amber as the sun begins its descent behind city walls. Imagine yourself stepping back outside, drawn to the distant call to evening prayers rising from the ziggurat. The low chant of priests weaves through the alleys, a slow hymn that calms the restless mind. You follow the sound until you reach a small shrine where incense burns steadily. The smoke curls upward in delicate spirals, carrying prayers like scented threads to unseen heights. You pause and press a cooled brick under your palm, feeling its warmth fade into twilight calm. Each moment here is a meditation on endurance and faith. Imagine yourself closing your eyes, letting the chant's steady pattern guide your breath. The murmur of prayer becomes a soothing undertow beneath the gentle hush of dusk. As twilight settles, you return home to prepare for dinner, gathering fresh herbs from a small courtyard garden. The touch of mint leaves against your fingertips is cool and velvety, their fragrance rising like a soft memory. You crush the leaves between your palms, releasing a breath of herbal brightness into the growing gloom. Imagine yourself sprinkling the crushed mint over a bowl of warm lentils, watching the green flecks swirl in amber liquid. The aroma is both soothing and invigorating, a final gift before night's hush. You taste a small spoonful, feeling the earth's richness melt on your tongue. The rhythm of their lives here finds solace in these quiet rituals of nourishment. Beyond the garden wall, the city's torch fires begin to glow, tiny beacons against the darkening sky. The soft crackle of flame and the distant murmur of footsteps blend into a gentle serenade. Imagine yourself leaning against the garden's carved stone balustrade, listening to the world settle into evening calm. Inside your hut, you light a small lamp, its flame flickering across rough walls. The amber glow reaches into corners where dust motes drift like tiny embers. You seat yourself on a low stool and place a small clay bowl before you. The bowl contains the last of today's flatbread, its edges crisp and its center soft. Imagine yourself tearing a piece and inhaling the warm, yeasty scent before tasting. Each bite is slow, deliberate, a ritual of gratitude for simple sustenance. You dip the bread in pomegranate syrup, its sweet tang a gentle contrast to the hearty grain. The flavors dance softly on your tongue, each sensation lingering like a whispered promise. As you finish, you feel the steady beat of your heart align with the world's quiet pulse. The constant struggle of daylight labor fades into the gentle hush of evening rest. The lamp's flame begins to dwindle, and you tilt the clay vessel to catch the last light. Shadows lengthen and stretch like silent sentinels, guarding the threshold between wakefulness and sleep. Imagine yourself setting the lamp aside and lying upon your reed mat once more. The cool embrace of the reed thatch cradles you as the city's night breathes softly beyond the walls. The distant murmur of the Euphrates drifts through the narrow gap beneath the door, a lullaby older than memory. You feel the dust of the day still resting on your skin, and yet it no longer weighs upon you. The rhythm of their lives rises and falls in the cadence of your own inhalation and exhalation. As your eyelids grow heavy, let the final echoes of daily toil dissolve into gentle dreams. Imagine yourself journeying across moonlit courtyards and silent streets, guided by memory's soft glow. The day's constant struggle yields to the quiet sanctuary of night's embrace. Let each breath find its own steady pace as history's hymn carries you toward rest. Imagine yourself stirring gently before dawn's faint glow, the night's velvet still draped across sun-baked rooftops. The city's hush is punctuated only by the soft rustle of palm fronds and the distant murmur of canal water beneath arched bridges. You rise on stiff limbs, feeling the cooling clutches of night's last breath before day's warmth returns. The rhythm of their lives begins anew with this subtle transition, each breath a reminder of the constant struggle woven into each sunrise. You step outside, inhaling the crisp air, scented with dew on reed mats, and the faint sweetness of fermenting dates waiting in clay jars. A lone herder guides goats along narrow lanes, their hooves tapping a quiet message on mud brick walls. Imagine yourself pausing to watch the herd pass, the bleats and soft clinks of their bells blending with your own inhalation and exhalation. The world feels suspended between dark and light, a tender moment of calm before the city awakens. You gather water from the communal well, its stone rims still cool against your fingers. Each dip of the bucket stirs tiny ripples that catch the emerging light like scattered gems. The water's touch on your skin is a gentle exhortation to movement, coaxing your body from sleep's embrace. Imagine yourself lifting the filled jar and carrying it on your shoulder, the weight both familiar and grounding. You trace a path to the wash area by the riverbank, where women kneel on smooth stones to launder household linens. The fabric feels soft yet slightly abrasive as you scrub, each motion releasing the scent of clay and the faintest hint of olive oil soap. The gentle cadence of scrub and rinse weaves into the city's awakening chorus. A child sits nearby, learning these chores by watching elders, their small hands fumbling with damp cloth, yet eager to mimic each gesture. You smile inwardly at this scene of shared learning, the rhythm of their lives passing from hand to hand and generation to generation. Once the linens shimmer clean in the pre-dawn light, you hang them on slender poles set between date palms. The fabric flutters softly like prayer flags, catching the first tendrils of daylight and announcing the new day. Imagine yourself stepping back to admire the gentle dance of cloth and breeze, the memory of night's coolness still lingering on your skin. You walk toward the courtyard oven, where loaves of barley bread bake on hot stones. The kiln's amber glow begins to warm the air, and you feel its comforting pulse against your calves. A cluster of neighbors stands nearby, their soft conversation a muted tide of voices sharing plans for the day. Each word drifts on the breeze, weaving a tapestry of communal life. You collect a fresh loaf with care, its crust firm yet yielding under your fingertips. The aroma of baking bread mingles with the scent of wet linen, creating a subtle symphony for the senses. Carrying bread and water, you return home to prepare the morning meal. Inside your hut, you layer thin slices of bread with crushed dates and a drizzle of honey. The sweetness is gentle, a small indulgence before the labor to come. Imagine yourself tasting a morsel, the textures melding like wind-carried whispers on the tongue. Beyond your door, the city's pulse quickens as market stalls light their lamps and merchants exchange greetings. The rhythm of their lives shifts from restful hush to purposeful motion. You step outside with your prepared meal, pausing to greet a neighbor who offers a nod and a blessing for a fruitful day. The warmth of the shared gesture spreads through you, softening the edges of anticipation. With morning sustenance behind you, you gather dyed wool threads destined for the weaver's loom. The fibers are tinted with ochre, indigo, and madder root, each hue derived from plants cultivated in nearby fields. You roll the threads into neat skeins, the strands slipping through your fingers like water through reeds. Imagine yourself inhaling the earthy scent of dyes and the faint musk of wool warmed by your hands. The weaver's workshop is shaded by palm fronds woven overhead, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow across the smooth wooden beams. You pass the skeins to a weaver whose hands move in a calming rhythm, crossing threads into intricate patterns that will become garments for temple priests or city officials. The gentle clack of the loom's heddles echoes like a lullaby, each sound a note in the daily hymn of creation. While the loom weaves, you assist with dyeing additional threads, lowering baskets of wool into earthen vats filled with colored liquid. The wool emerges transformed, its strands coated in deep, saturated tones. You lift each length, feeling the damp fibers press against your skin, releasing a warm breath of plant essence. Imagine yourself marveling at the palette of colors, a quiet celebration of nature's bounty. The air here is tinged with the faint sting of vinegar used to set the dyes, a gentle reminder of alchemical practice. The spinner's wheel stands nearby, idle until the weaver calls for fresh bobbins. You take hold of the whirl, guiding fibers into thread with steady fingers. The wheel's soft turning becomes a comforting undertow to the loom's higher pitch. The combined chorus of tools and hands creates a soothing backdrop for thoughts to drift freely. As the sun climbs higher, you step away to visit the healer's courtyard, offering fresh bundles of mint and lavender for medicinal use. The healer kneads herbs into pastes, her hands pressing plant essences into clay pots. Imagine yourself watching the mixing, the earthy aromas rising in gentle spirals. A small wound on your finger is dipped into a poultice of pounded dates and frankincense, its cool relief spreading softly across your skin. The healer's calm voice reminds you of the city's care woven into its daily rituals. You gather your supplies and drift toward the central square, where the morning bell tolls for midday prayers. The sound reverberates through streets and hearts, guiding both commoners and nobles alike. Imagine yourself kneeling at a small shrine outside your home, raising your hands in quiet reverence as the prayer chant begins. The incense smoke curls upward, carrying hopes and gratitude toward unseen heights. Each breath you draw aligns with the steady beat of drum and chant, the rhythm of their lives converging with your own. As the liturgy concludes, you rise with a sense of renewed purpose, ready to continue your day's work. You step into a lane where clay potters shape vessels destined for kitchens and temples. The clay is cool and pliant beneath your fingertips as you mold a modest jar for storing oil. A master potter guides your hands in soft corrections, each suggestion offered with tranquil patience. Imagine yourself tracing the vase's curves, feeling the symmetry beneath your palm. The potter's studio is awash in morning light filtered through reed blinds, creating a serene mosaic on every surface. Your jar set aside, you wander toward the river's edge once more, where fishermen mend nets in the gentle hum of laughter and conversation. Each net knot is tied with practiced precision, the cords looped and tightened in repetitive motion. Imagine yourself handling the flax twine, its fibers rough yet surprisingly tender, against your fingertips. The scent of fish lingers faintly on the nets, a subtle reminder of the river's daily generosity. A fisherman offers you a small scrap of dried fish as thanks for your company, its flavor smoky and briny on the tongue. You accept with a nod, savoring the taste and the unspoken bond between laborers. The rhythm of their lives is evident in every tug of net and every shared morsel. Returning home with new pottery, herbs, and dried fish, You pause to watch smoke spiral from neighborhood hearths. The smoke's pale tendrils drift lazily overhead, weaving into the pale sky like threads in a tapestry. Imagine yourself inhaling its gentle warmth, feeling connected to countless souls performing similar rituals. You step through your doorway, the threshold cool beneath your feet, and place your gathered items on a low shelf. The afternoon sun angles through the reed walls, creating an amber glow that shifts slowly as minutes pass. In this quiet corner of your home, you sit cross-legged and untie a small bundle of papyrus, a rare treat for reading simple poems or accounts of distant travelers. You trace the elegant script with your fingertip, the ink's slight texture, a testament to human ingenuity. The soft murmur of narrative washes over you, each word a lullaby urging rest for both reader and hand. As the sun begins its descent toward the western walls, you set aside the papyrus and prepare a modest stew of lentils, onions, and wild herbs. The pot simmers on a small hearth, its fragrance rising in gentle curls that soothe the mind. Imagine yourself stirring the stew, the wooden spoon gliding through warm liquid and tender grains. The act is simple yet profound, a moment of creation that sustains both body and spirit. Around you, the city's gates begin to close with a low, rumbling creak, sealing daylight's bustle behind sturdy wood. You hear the distant call of watchmen performing their rounds, their voices steady and unhurried. The rhythm of their lives guides the city into night's sanctuary. You sit to eat by the light of a small lamp, the glow softening the stew's amber hues. Each spoonful warms your chest, its flavor carrying the essence of soil, sun, and human care. Imagine yourself savoring the meal in slow, deliberate bites, each one a quiet celebration of life's simple gifts. Afterward, you gather with neighbors around a low fire in a communal courtyard. Someone recites a short tale of city founders, their voices steady and devoid of flourish, ensuring sleep's gentle approach. You close your eyes, letting the pattern of storytelling and firelight become a lullaby. The soft crackle of embers and the distant flow of water merge into a serene symphony. As your companions drift away one by one, you return to your hut under a sky dotted with stars. The air has cooled, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from a neighbor's garden. You extinguish your lamp and settle onto your reed mat, the woven fibers cradling your form. Imagine yourself exhaling the day's labors, each breath releasing tension and ushering in calm. The rhythm of their lives now matches the steady beat of your heart, guiding you into sleep's embrace. Let each moment fade into restful darkness, carried on ancient currents of routine and gentle reflection. The soft murmur of the Euphrates beneath your walls lulls you deeper, assuring that tomorrow's sun will rise once more on this ancient tapestry of life. When you are ready, simply let go and drift with history's soothing breath. Imagine yourself rising before the sun. Its first glow transforms the sky from deep indigo to soft lavender. The cool air brushes your skin with a gentle caress, reminding you of the river's silent presence. You step outside your hut once more to tend to the final tasks of the day. The lantern inside still burns faintly, its light flickering across the woven mat you leave behind. Around you, a soft hush lingers, broken only by the distant coo of pigeons roosting on mud brick walls. The world feels suspended between night and dawn, a moment of quiet promise. Imagine yourself carrying a small clay cup to a nearby basin of water. The water's surface shimmers like liquid glass as you stir the cup's contents. A faint aroma drifts upward, the fragrance of crushed mint and wild thyme brewed for early medicine. You sip carefully, letting the cool liquid soothe any lingering aches in your joints. Each swallow brings a gentle warmth that spreads through your chest like a balm. The rhythm of their lives is measured not only in labor but also in quiet nourishment. You walk along a narrow lane toward the city's communal latrine, mindful of each careful step. The rough texture of the path shifts beneath your sandals, inviting a moment of focused breath. The structure is simple, its reed walls standing in humble service to necessity. Inside, you feel a soft draft that carries the scent of city incense from the temple. You finish your morning ritual and step back into the courtyard's cool embrace. The sky lightens to pale rose as stars fade from view. Imagine yourself gathering clay pots to carry fresh water for household tasks. The pots are smooth in your arms, each vessel shaped with hands guided by tradition. You move through quiet streets where artisans and scribes have yet to appear. The hush before dawn feels sacred, a brief sanctuary before the city's bustle. At a corner stall, a keeper of pigeons opens his cage to feed the birds. You watch as white wings flutter, brushing your skin with fleeting cool drafts. The birds coo softly and peck at scattered grains dusted with cumin. The scene unfolds like a gentle fable played out at the city's edge. Imagine yourself continuing onward to the fish sauce vats near the bazaar's entrance. The barrels stand in neat rows, their lids closed against the cool morning air. A faint tang of fermenting fish clings to their wooden rims. The scent is distant now, muted by the night's low temperature. You pause to inhale and let the complexity of aromas settle into your mind. Each breath carries both comfort and a reminder of the labor that shapes this world. The rhythm of their lives is woven into every scent and sound. You pass a row of salted date vendors arranging their glossy fruit under soft awnings. The dates gleam like dark jewels in the morning light. A vendor offers you a small taste, the sweetness lingering on your tongue. You savor the flavor slowly, letting each morsel awaken your senses. Beyond, the bazaar remains still, its pathways calm before the day's tide of activity. Imagine yourself retreating to a shaded alcove to rest your arms. The walls here are cool with fading night's dampness. You run your hand over the surface, feeling the slight roughness of dried clay. A gentle breeze stirs a strand of hair across your cheek. The city's heartbeat is a low hum beneath the stirring wind. In this moment, the boundaries between past and present blur into one soft breath. The ebb of dawn offers a lullaby in the quiet rustle of palm fronds overhead. You rise to your feet and collect wooden crates filled with fresh barley. The kernels spill gently into a woven basket, their weight a grounding comfort. Imagine yourself hauling the basket to the temple granary. The courtyard of the granary stands empty, its columns glowing in early light. You exchange a respectful greeting with a priest who measures the day's tithes. The process is solemn yet calm, each token sliding with a gentle click. Your share of grain slips into your basket, a tangible assurance of tomorrow's bread. The rhythm of their lives unfolds in each small transaction of sustenance. You exit the temple and follow a path toward your abode. The horizon blooms in shades of pale gold and pink. Imagine yourself pausing on a low wall to savor the sunrise's soft colors. The stones beneath you hold the sun's memory like a warming embrace. You inhale the gentle scent of dew-soaked clay and honey-sweet lilies growing nearby. The day ahead feels both vast and intimate in this quiet prelude. Beyond the wall, merchants begin to stoke their braziers and spread their wares. You linger in this threshold of day, letting the moment settle into your bones. The gentle murmur of early commerce drifts through the air. Imagine yourself re-entering your hut to perform a final chore of the morning. You gather reeds for a small repair on the hut's thatched roof. The reeds are slender, flexible, and still cool from the night's embrace. You mount a low step to reach a damaged patch near the ridge. With careful hands, you weave the new reeds into place. Each strand clicks softly against the older thatch. The repair feels like a quiet offering to both shelter and sky. You complete the task and step down, dusting your hands with a gentle tap. The hut stands steady behind you, a sanctuary shaped by patient labor. Imagine yourself leaving once more to visit the bazaar as it awakens fully. The pathways now teem with bodies and stalls. Heat rises from the mud brick streets in visible waves. The stench of fish sauce blends with the sweeter notes of date honey. You breathe it all in without judgment, letting each aroma inform your understanding. The threat of debt slavery lingers in whispered warnings at certain stalls. Imagine yourself pausing at a moneylender's counter where clay tablets record heavy debts. The clerk's eyes remain steady as he chisels your family's balance into the tablet's surface. Each mark is a reminder of obligations carried across seasons. You step away, the weight of responsibility balanced by the steadiness of your steps. Beyond the moneylender, fruit vendors shout soft invitations, their calls weaving like thread. You take a small piece of melon offered freely by a neighbor, its juice cool and sweet. The contrast of relief and caution melds into the city's persistent duality. Imagine yourself moving on to find respite beside a canal where water laps gently on stone. You rest your back against a shaded wall, closing your eyes in quiet gratitude. The ripple of water and distant chatter create a gentle harmony. The constant struggle and the gentle murmur of daily life become one soft refrain. You rise when the sun climbs high, returning home for a well-deserved pause. Each sensation of this day, from dawn's cool breath to morning chores, from bazaar bustle to serene waters, resonates in your bones like an ancient lullaby. Let the rhythm of their lives guide your awareness toward calm reflection, and restful ease. As the amber light of dawn softens across the palace walls, you find yourself drifting from the echoes of daily toil into a world of ambition and stone. In that gentle moment, the rhythm of their lives gives way to the rhythm of empire. Imagine yourself stepping across the threshold of history, leaving behind the dusty lanes of the common quarters. Hammurabi's story begins not with thunderous fanfare, but with the quiet promise of an Amorite prince destined to shape the course of Mesopotamia. Born to a modest ruling house on the fringes of Babylon, he entered the world under a sky speckled with distant stars. You can almost feel the warmth of early morning air as it whispered through their reed-thatched walls. Even then, the faint tang of pressed barley and the soft murmur of the Tigris carried on each breeze. His family's modest clay brick compound lay nestled between rising trade routes and the farmlands that fed the city. In those first years, the subtle weight of future responsibilities rested on his small shoulders. Each time he watched grain caravans trundle past, he sensed the pulse of power moving like quiet water beneath the surface of life. By adolescence, he had learned to read and write in Akkadian cuneiform, tracing gentle furrows in soft clay tablets. The scratch of stylus on clay became a familiar lullaby, calming the stirrings of youthful anxiety. Even the palace scribes, stern in their robes, spoke of his steady hand and attentive mind. When he first crossed the threshold of the royal courtyard of Isin, the hush of bronze gates closed behind him. A new rhythm overtook him as he navigated grand columns carved with protective spirits. You can almost smell the polished stone and the faint undertone of incense lingering in the air. In those halls, every gesture was measured, every exchange weighed with silent consequence. His instructors, often robed priests, taught him the sacred relationship between divine favor and earthly rule. They whispered of Marduk's watchful eye, reminding the young prince of the god's steady gaze. In return, he learned patience and the subtle art of waiting for openings to emerge. Outside the palace walls, the shimmering city of Babylon pulsed with life. Merchants called out their wares, and the melody of multiple tongues wove through the bazaars. The air was thick with the scent of date wine fermenting in clay jars. You might hear the gentle gurgle of canal channels as they guided water to thirsty fields. Each sound reinforced the constant ebb and flow that governed every corner of society. When the time came for Hammurabi to claim his birthright, he did so not through boisterous proclamation, but through a series of carefully brokered alliances. He dispatched envoys to nearby city-states, bearing gifts wrapped in woven reeds. In their exchanges, he learned the delicate dance of diplomacy, where words served as both offering and weapon. The motif of carved stone guided his thoughts, reminding him that true rulership endured beyond a single lifetime. Over seasons of negotiation and occasional show of force, he expanded his influence across the fertile plains. At times, the clash of bronze-rimmed shields echoed across open fields, though those moments remained subdued in the grand design. The dust from marching troops settled into the furrows of ploughed land, marking each advance. With each treaty sealed, Babylon's boundaries crept outward like an ever-growing circle. You can envision the ancient maps sketched in charcoal, lines drawn to measure victory. Yet even conquest carried a rhythm akin to the flow of the rivers. Victory did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered as governors bent the knee and envoys exchanged courteous bows. Over years, Sumerian city-states such as Uruk and Lagash fell under his sway. Each addition to his realm brought fresh murmurs of both hope and caution among the people. In homes and workshops, families spoke of the new prince who claimed to bring order and stability. The common folk watched the rising banners stitched with his emblem, a silent testament to shifting power. Meanwhile, he balanced the steady liturgy of temple offerings with the hush of political intrigue. In the great Esagil temple, priests guided him through silent rites beneath soaring pillars. He presented libations to Marduk, watching the amber liquid catch the torchlight. The flicker of flame danced like echoes of distant storms, and you can almost feel the gentle warmth on your cheek. Each ritual underscored the delicate balance he maintained between piety and pragmatism. As he solidified his rule, he envisioned a realm united under a single voice and a single set of expectations. The clay tablets under his scribe S. stylus would someday bear the imprint of his name across the land. In those quiet moments, he felt the true weight of carved stone settling into his hands. You sensed the metaphor of diorite emerging here, a material both unyielding and everlasting. Before the world would ever hear of his famous law code, his early reign was shaped by subtle currents of influence. He listened more than he spoke, cataloguing grievances petitioners brought before his throne. Each appeal became a lesson in the diversity of human need and the complexity of justice. In his private quarters, where the aroma of frankincense still lingered, he pored over dossiers of disputes. The hush of night offered him clarity, with only the trill of distant nightbirds for company. During these solitary hours, he contemplated how to bind the empire with more than alliances and threats. The motif of the balance of carved stone whispered in his mind, urging him toward a grander vision. Sooner or later, the loose threads of custom had to be woven into a cohesive tapestry. When he spoke of order, his voice carried the steady weight of measured promise. He sought to craft laws that would endure beyond his own pulse. Yet even as he dreamed of a unified realm, he recognized that piety to Marduk must anchor every decree. Without the god's blessing, even the firmest edict risked falling like rain on parched earth. Thus, his reputation grew as both a warrior king and a devout servant of the divine. Continuing the gentle cadence of history, the next chapter unfolds in the quiet halls of Babylon's palace. Here the vision of unity that stirred in Hammurabi's mind moves from thought to tangible plan. He summons his trusted scribes and advisors under the soft glow of early morning lamps. The air holds a faint scent of sweet date wine and ink-smudged clay tablets. Around a low stone table, clay tablets bearing whispered petitions rest in tidy rows. The motif of balance of carved stone resonates in each careful exchange of words. Hammurabi rises, robes brushing against polished stone floors. His eyes carry the quiet weight of leadership already proven in battle. A hush falls among the gathered assembly as he speaks of forging a new covenant of justice. He speaks not in thundering roar, but in measured tones that echo like distant river flows. Around him the scribes lean forward, stylus poised above fresh tablets. Their trained hands are ready to capture every guiding principle he lays out. Over the coming days, they will compile hundreds of statutes designed to shape daily life. Under the motif of whisper of laws, each proposed clause receives careful scrutiny. They debate the language of theft, weighing the difference between minor trespass and grand larceny. They consider the bonds of marriage, pondering how divorce should be addressed in a fair society. They discuss the responsibilities of builders, understanding that a collapsed wall can destroy lives. In these deliberations, the rhythm of empire is found in the steady exchange of thought. Once the statutes are drafted in Akkadian, attention turns to their immortalization. Hammurabi selects diorite, a dark, crystalline rock, known for its unyielding strength. The choice of diorite mirrors his desire for laws as unbreakable as the stone itself. A caravan of ox-drawn carts sets out to the distant quarries beyond the Zagros foothills. Under a scorching sun, laborers work in silence, prying massive blocks from the earth. You might imagine the low hum of hammers striking chisels, a gentle ripple in the quiet countryside. The heavy blocks travel slowly, wheels creaking and dust rising in soft plumes. When the caravan arrives at Babylon's gates, a subtle anticipation fills the air. The diorite block travels into the palace courtyard, where artisans await with sharper tools. The master stone carver brushes away stray grains of sand before his chisel meets rock. Each tap of hammer on chisel produces a calm, measured tone, like distant thunder trimmed to whisper. Under his skilled hand, the diorite takes shape into a slender, 7-foot stele. At the stele's apex, the carver etches the solemn relief of Hammurabi receiving law from Shamash. The sun god extends a rod and ring, symbolizing authority charged by divine mandate. You may sense the soft glow of torchlight in your mind as the relief emerges. Beneath the relief, lines of cuneiform script fall into neat columns on the polished surface. The script unfurls like the measured steps of a dance, each character deliberate and clear. Hammurabi watches the process with quiet satisfaction, aware of the weight of each carved line. He contemplates the echo this stele will send across the shifting sands of time. Once the carving is complete, the stele stands alone in the courtyard, a sentinel of justice. Priests and officials gather in the morning hush to witness its unveiling. The air crackles with expectancy but remains beautifully calm. As sunlight strikes the diorite, its dark surface glimmers with specks of mica. The relief seems to come alive in that gentle radiance. A priest intones a blessing to Marduk, invoking protection over the laws about to be declared. The hush deepens as Hammurabi steps forward, staff in hand. His voice carries easily across the silent assembly. He proclaims that from this day forward, every citizen shall be a guardian of order. He speaks of property rights, reminding landowners of both privilege and duty. He addresses domestic affairs, urging fair treatment between spouses. He outlines construction liabilities, warning that negligence will face measured recompense. Each eye for an eye clause echoes in the still air with precise clarity. He reads the statute on theft, where stolen grain incurs a doubled restitution. He shares details on divorce, noting that a husband and wife part ways with equitable settlements. He cites the statute on building collapse, stating a builder's life hangs in the balance of his workmanship. As he speaks, you feel a gentle pressure beneath your chest, as though the laws themselves shape the breath you draw. The motif of balance of carved stone pulses with each articulated statute. After the declaration, priests seal the stele with consecrated oil. They fashion a shallow basin at its base to capture libations offered in future festivals. The artisans step back and allow onlookers to approach and trace the script with their fingertips. The cool diorite surface welcomes these gentle touches, as if breathing through the laws. In the days that follow, copies of the code are inscribed on clay tablets across the realm. Governors receive sealed clay copies, placing them in their own temple courts. The whisper of laws travels across caravans, reaching distant towns and villages. Merchants set up portable tablets, reading aloud clauses to patrons before contracts are sealed. Even in the smallest hamlets, the rhythm of empire finds a new resonance. Farmers petition local judges, quoting the code, to settle disputes over irrigation rights. Craftsmen consult clay tablets before forging tools, mindful of standards set by the stele. Families rehearse passages by fireside, committing them to memory like bedtime verses. Over time, the code weaves itself into the pattern of daily life, becoming as natural as breath. And yet, Hammurabi remains vigilant, balancing his role as pious servant and shrewd ruler. In moonlit nights, he prays for Marduk's guidance, whispering thanks for each measured decree. He knows that laws must adapt to the shifting currents of human need and empire's expansion. The stele endures as testimony to a moment when carved stone carried the whispered hopes of many. Its towering presence reminds onlookers that order can be as gentle as a flowing stream and as firm as bedrock. In that gentle blend of strength and calm, you sense the full weight of Hammurabi's achievement. The diorite stele stands not merely as a monument, but as a living guide for civilization. Through it, the rhythm of empire is set, tempered by compassion and bound by precision. The whisper of laws drifts through generations, shaping destinies with silent authority. In markets and workshops, the code's presence feels like a reassuring heartbeat. As seasons change and new rulers come and go, the stele's carved words remain steadfast. You can imagine mothers telling their children stories of the king who carved justice into stone. Artists sketch miniature replicas of the stele on fragments of pottery, honoring its enduring message. Even wandering minstrels recite lines from the code, weaving them into gentle lullabies. Thus, the motif of whisper of laws extends beyond courts and temples into the fabric of daily life. And so, in this still courtyard, beneath the gaze of gods and men, the first comprehensive law code takes root. In that echo of carved stone, the future finds its firm but gentle foundation. As the echo of carved stone settled into the quiet air of Babylon's courts, the whispers of laws began to hum through the daily rhythm of life. The stele's inscription, like a gentle undertow, carried its steady pulse into every corner of the realm. At dawn the next morning, you can imagine the sound of leather sandals skimming across sun-warmed stone corridors. Merchants stepped into bustling stalls, their fingers tracing the edges of earthenware pots. Into this lively tapestry, the code's key statutes unfolded like careful threads woven through common routines. Under the motif of balance of carved stone, each clause found its way into common parlance. In the marketplace, the statute on theft shaped how shopkeepers arranged their goods. Clay jars of grain stood behind low wooden barriers, reminding customers that stolen kernels would double the price of restitution. Buyers paused to consider each measure before slipping coins into clay bowls. The faint clatter of coin on pottery echoed with the hush of law in every transaction. Shop owners who once faced minor pilfering now stood guard with a quiet vigilance. They assessed each visitor with thoughtful glances rather than suspicion-laden shouts. The whisper of laws offered reassurance that theft would not go unnoticed, and so the rhythm of empire threaded through each stall and table. In the cool shade, cast by woven palm fronds, families discussed the statute on marriage and divorce. The clause on divorce rippled through domestic circles like a soft refrain. A husband and wife parted with an equitable share of household goods, their dispute measured by scribe and judge. The hushed tone of negotiation replaced eerie silence or bitter contention. You might hear the gentle murmur of voices over clay tablets at bedside. The motif of whisper of laws found its way into lullabies mothers sang to restless children. Among builders and craftsmen, the clause on construction liability cast a steady influence. When a newly built wall collapsed, the builder faced a stern reckoning. Under that clause, an injured family might claim material restitution or even blood compensation. You can almost feel the subtle thrum of tension beneath each block, laid in careful alignment. Workers whispered reminders of safety standards as they measured stones. The balance of carved stone guided their hands under the sun's warm glow. Mortar mixed with fine clay adhered to bricks with the promise of stability. Every builder thought of the code with each chip of hammer on fretted stone. In distant villages, the whisper of laws drifted across irrigation canals and mud brick homes. Farmers paused at canal banks to recite theft statutes before distributing water fairly. They spoke of theft in the same breath as sharing life-giving channel flows. The faint rustle of reeds and the gurgle of water underscored each recitation, and the clause on irrigation theft fostered community trust, like gentle currents binding a river's flow. Within temple precincts, priests maintained clay registers of disputes. Each plea passed through hushed corridors of alabaster altars and scented oils. The whisper of marriage clauses shaped their guidance to worshippers seeking divorce. The flicker of torchlight danced across carved reliefs as priests offered measured counsel. They reminded petitioners that divine favor favored fair agreement, and that the carved stone of the law code balanced piety with pragmatic justice. In the heart of Babylon, itinerant judges carried miniature clay copies into remote districts. They sat beneath date palms or in simple reed-built courts to hear local disputes. The faint aroma of fresh dates mingled with the dust on stout wooden benches. Under the motif of whisper of laws, Each decision echoed the stele's inscriptions. Court sessions began with a hush that felt like a gentle benediction and ended with the measured weight of carved stone settling over both victor and defeated. Market children learned the statutes as part of their first schooling. Mothers guided their fingers across clay script, tracing letters like loving parents. The soft grain of clay pressed into youthful fingertips felt safe and familiar. Thus, the whisper of laws became a bedtime lesson whispered like a protective charm, and in that daily ritual, the pulse of empire beat softly within family hearths. Caravans crossing distant trade routes bore rolled clay tablets of the code. Travelers drank from leather water skins under African date palms of remote towns. They recited clauses around campfires where embers glowed like tiny camped stars. The rhythm of empire traveled ahead of soldiers, ahead of merchants, ahead of wanderers. In each far-flung settlement, the code's clauses brought a shared sense of orderly belonging. Even in the thick crowds of the Jerusalem gate, you could sense the hush of the stele's influence. Guards checked cargo lists against stolen property statutes before allowing passage. Their wooden clubs tapped rhythmically against stone, echoing carved justice. No one spoke of the law as threat, but as a silent guardian keeping chaos at bay. Under twilight skies, the motif of balance of carved stone appeared in taverns. Patrons drinking date wine spoke quietly of theft restitution over bowls of lentil stew. Their words floated above the steam rising from clay dishes. A whispered clause on domestic dispute sometimes diffused a heated argument. The flicker of oil lamps cast dancing shadows on cuneiform fragments hung as decoration. In scholarly circles, scribes debated minor clauses in moonlit libraries. They exchanged stylus-tipped clay tablets under the hush of scholarly reflection. The whisper of laws guided their discussions on justice and morality. They pondered how Hammurabi's clauses might evolve under future kings, yet they always returned to the diorite stele as the source of constancy. Children playing in alleyways imitated judges settling disputes over sticks. Innocent laughter echoed like ripples across calm waters. Yet even in play, the clause on theft whispered in their games. They learned rules by mimicking adult recitations, turning structured justice into simple rhyme. Each game carried the motif of whisper of laws deep into youthful minds. As seasons shifted and festivals approached, the code took center stage in public ceremonies. During the Akitu festival, priests retold statutes as part of the New Year renewal. The soft strains of lyres accompanied the recitation of laws beneath open sky. The motif of rhythm of empire merged with the cyclical rhythms of agriculture. Worshippers felt the carved stone's presence like an unseen embrace of order. Even after generations, whispers of Hammurabi's statutes lingered in market squares. When a stranger arrived hungry, locals consulted grain theft clauses before offering aid. Compassion and caution intertwined under the carved code. The clauses became as familiar as dawn bird calls over open fields. In the hush before sleep, elders recounted stories of the lawgiver's wisdom. The balance of carved stone persisted in every heart that held justice dear. And so, in quiet moments across the empire, the eye for an eye clauses shaped daily life with a firm yet gentle touch. As the steely's carved words settled into everyday life, Hammurabi turned his thoughts inward, weighing the sacred against the strategic. You can sense him slipping through the dim corridors of Esagil, the great temple of Marduk, where flickering torchlight danced along painted reliefs. The air is thick with the scent of frankincense, lingering like a promise of divine favor. In the hush of those temple halls, he offers libations with measured reverence, whispering prayers he hopes will echo in the ear of the storm god. Each drop of oil that pools at the altar feels like a gentle reminder of the whisper of laws he crafted in diorite. Yet outside the temple, the rhythm of empire demands a sterner resolve. Envoys arrive bearing news of distant rebellions in the northern provinces, cities chafing under Babylon's gentle yoke. In council chambers, advisors murmur of chariots massing beyond the Tigris. Hammurabi steadies himself against a carved stone pillar, feeling its cool surface steady his pulse. He knows that piety alone cannot quell the stirrings of dissent. The motif of balance of carved stone emerges again in his mind, urging him toward an equilibrium between compassion and control. He summons the temple priests and the city's military leaders to a private audience beneath the soaring arches. You might imagine the soft echo of their footsteps on polished stone floors. He speaks of Marduk's vision for order, reminding them that the gods favor unity over strife. His voice bears the gentle weight of conviction, as calm as the flow of the Euphrates at dawn. Still behind that composed tone, his gaze flickers with resolve. In that moment, piety and politics merge like two streams becoming one steady current. Under the motif of echo of diorite, Hammurabi presents a dual strategy. He proposes sending grain rations to loyal cities as token offerings, while dispatching battalions to quell unrest with swift precision. The priests bless this plan with murmured incantations, and the generals nod in solemn agreement. You may feel the curious tension between the soft press of prayer and the hard edge of battlements. It is here he learns that empathy and authority must coexist in the same breath. At twilight, he retreats to his private chambers, where the faint glow of oil lamps reveals clay tablets stacked like silent witnesses. By their light, he pores over reports of judicial proceedings, noting where local governors upheld his code and where they bent it to their schemes. The hush of night offers clarity, and the motif of the weight of carved stone settles across his shoulders like a mantle. He understands that justice without vigilance can slip into chaos. Beyond the palace gates, the people feel both his mercy and his might. Farmers troubled by water-sharing disputes receive compassionate judgments from itinerant judges guided by his statutes, yet artisans who overcharge for their labor face stern penalties under theft clauses. You may pick up on the gentle contrast between kind justice and firm correction, each reinforcing the other in a delicate dance. This dance becomes the hallmark of his reign. In distant outposts, rumors spread of a lawgiver who honors the gods and marshals armies in equal measure. Travelers speak of a diorite stele where law and divinity entwine. They speak in hushed tones of piety that feels like whispered prayer, and politics that strikes like tempered steel. Each tale adds to the motif of rhythm of empire, where calm governance and controlled force interplay seamlessly. Even within the palace, personal loyalties test his equilibrium. His brothers, once bound by blood, now cast envious glances at his growing dominion. You can almost hear the low strain of tension as courtiers exchange subtle glances and encoded courtesies. Hammurabi greets them with measured courtesy, offering words of unity as he studies their expressions. He reminds himself that ambition is a flame that can either warm or consume, depending on how it is tended. On feast days, he participates in lavish ceremonies for Ishtar and Shamash, feeling the gentle hum of religious devotion ripple through the crowd. Palm fronds sway overhead and the scent of roasted dormice mingles with sweet date wine. Yet beneath the festivities, he remains mindful of the Stele's statutes, knowing that the same hand that offers sacrifice must also enforce decree. This duality becomes as natural to him as the rising and setting of the sun. Late one evening, a whisper reaches him of dissent among temple scribes who question certain eye for an eye clauses. They worry that too rigid an application might alienate the pious. You can picture Hammurabi standing before a low table, torchlight flickering across his determined features. He listens to their concerns with genuine respect, then speaks softly of divine justice that must reflect the god's unwavering nature. The motif of balance of carved stone guides his response, blending mercy and firmness into a single hewn principle. In the weeks that follow, he issues clarifying edicts that allow judges limited discretion in exceptional cases, reminding them that even carved stone can be refined by a chisel's careful touch. Governors across the empire receive new clay tablets with these supplementary guidelines, their surfaces cool under each official's palm. The whisper of laws evolves, growing gentler where needed and firmer where necessary, much like the shifting waters of the great rivers. As the months pass, Hammurabi's personal stakes heighten. Reports arrive that neighboring Elam considers pressing eastward, testing Babylon's borders. Court envoys advise a harsh response, but priests caution a measured approach, invoking Marduk's will for harmony. In that moment, Hammurabi stands at a crossroads of conscience and strategy. You feel the almost imperceptible shift in air as he chooses the path that honors both ends. He dispatches peace emissaries bearing sacred gifts alongside a contingent of soldiers under strict orders to hold the line but avoid needless bloodshed. In the soft hush before dawn, he surveys the dispatches and offers another silent prayer at Marduk's altar. The motif of echo of diorite resonates, reminding him that his legacy will not rest on conquest alone, but on the careful balance of devotion and authority. The laws carved in stone endure, but it is his measured heart that lends them life. And so, in the intertwining currents of temple devotion and palace intrigue, Hammurabi's personal journey reveals itself as a masterful weaving of piety and power. The carved stele remains his silent partner, reflecting in polished stone the steadfast harmony he strives to uphold. In that gentle melding of faith and firmness, the steady heartbeat of empire finds its true cadence. In the soft golden light of an early morning, Hammurabi stands before the diorite stele one last time in his life, letting the carved letters settle into his soul. He breathes in the cool air, feeling the echo of diorite resonate like a steady drumbeat beneath his feet. The whisper of laws lingers in the hush of dawn as merchants and priests prepare for the day's observances. He recalls the first inked impressions on clay tablets that bore his vision into reality. Each line on those tablets felt like a gentle guide, steering the realm toward harmony. Now his vision has taken the form of living stone that will outlast countless generations. A breeze stirs the date palms, carrying with it the faint scent of sweet fruit and sacred oils. In that moment, the rhythm of empire pulses in tandem with nature's own cadence. He steps back and allows the morning's warmth to fill his chest. Around him, the courtyard's shadows shift with the sun's slow climb. Priests murmur quiet hymns to Marduk, their words weaving invisible currents of devotion. The motif of whisper of laws found new life in those prayers, uniting divine will and human order. Nearby, scribes wipe clay dust from their hands before gathering around fresh tablets. Their eyes gleam with purpose as they prepare to document further interpretations of the code. In their cautious hands, the code evolves, guided by the delicate touch of interpretation. Each supplemental edict carries the careful weight of carved stone tempered by human insight. Across the palace walls, reliefs depict scenes of irrigation and procession. The flow of water down aqueducts mirrors the spread of justice under his statutes. The motif of balance of carved stone echoes in every carved relief, reminding all who gaze upon them of his enduring legacy. In the bustling bazaar beyond the palace gates, traders greet one another under awnings of woven reeds. Traders whisper clauses to settle disputes over spilled oil or mismeasured grain. The whisper of laws shapes even the most mundane exchanges, wrapping them in a cloak of calm certainty. Travelers arriving from distant lands pause at the city gate to gaze at the steely silhouette against the sky. They trace the carved reliefs with reverence, sensing the poise of divine authority captured in stone. The motif of echo of diorite accompanies them as they tread on weathered streets. With each step, the law code's presence hums beneath their sandals, a silent guide across shifting sands. As seasons change, the code's clauses adapt to new challenges without losing their foundational strength. In the fertile valleys, farmers consult local judges on disputes over shared water rights. They speak of irrigation statutes as though reciting a comforting prayer. The water flows more freely when justice is known to have carved deep channels in the heart. In remote mountain villages, clay tablets of the code are stored in vaulted rooms built into rock faces. Elders gather by firelight to retell stories of the lawmakers' compassion and resolve. Their voices carry across starlit nights, weaving the motif of rhythm of empire into local myth. The hush of their storytelling feels like a gentle lullaby, soothing unrest in minds and hearts. Children listen wide-eyed as elders speak of the stele that bridged earth and sky. They fall asleep to the cadence of whisper of laws, dreaming of balanced scales and carved stone. Generations later, when kings and conquerors come and go, the stele remains steadfast. Even floodwaters that once threatened the plains cannot erase the carved letters. The flood that reshapes the land carries clay fragments but leaves the diorite unscathed. In that resilience, the motif of echo of diorite speaks of permanence amid upheaval. Pilgrims traveling along dusty roads pause to offer prayers at local shrines that house fragments of law tablets. They whisper statutes back to the gods, believing that justice protects both realm and soul. The balance of carved stone merges with human devotion in each humble offering. Meanwhile, the temples of Enlil and Ninurta record the code in their sacred archives. Priests copy the statutes onto scrolls made of papyrus and vellum. They preserve those papyrus scrolls in reed baskets lined with clay. Though the technology changes, the underlying motif remains the whisper of laws. Across the Mediterranean coast, merchants refer to Babylon's code when dealing with foreign traders. They cite eye for an eye clauses to ensure fair treatment in far-off ports. Even then, the rhythm of empire stretches beyond borders, carried by commerce and culture. In later centuries, scholars will study these statutes to glimpse the mind of the ancient ruler. They will marvel at the fusion of law and divine mandate etched into diorite. In quiet libraries, the echo of carved stone will inspire debates on justice and governance. Philosophers will praise the code's precision, while poets will weave its imagery into verse. Even in modern dreams, the motif of balance of carved stone finds its way into bedtime stories about ancient kings. Yet none of these future reflections were visible to Hammurabi as he lived. He saw only the immediate impact of his work, barns secured against theft, and families reconciled through fair judgment. He received letters from distant governors praising the clarity his code had brought to chaotic disputes. In return, he sent additional edicts clarifying ambiguous points with humble respect for local customs. The whisper of laws grew more nuanced, reflecting human complexity under divine order. His personal stakes remained high as he balanced ambition with piety in equal measure. You sense his heartbeat aligning with the rhythm of empire, each pulse echoing carved stone stability. As the sun reaches its zenith, officials gather beneath shade to perform midday rites before the stele. They pour oil into the basin at its base, watching it pool like an offering of liquid gold. The oil's surface ripples with whispered prayers, carrying the motif of whisper of laws into divine realms. On quiet evenings, Hammurabi meditates on the diorite's polished surface, seeing in it both his triumphs and his limitations. He contemplates the weight his code will bear if future rulers either honor or neglect its spirit. The motif of echo of diorite hums in his mind like a silent hymn. In those reflective moments, he understands that law is both anchor and compass for civilization. He dreams of future excavations that might uncover his stele, though he cannot know the distant fate of buried stone. Mortals will one day brush away dust and unveil the carved letters connecting across millennia. At that thought, he offers a silent prayer that his intentions remain clear amid centuries of interpretation. The whisper of laws reaches beyond his era, tying past and future through a steady current of carved words. In the final chapter of his life, he finds solace in the paradox of permanence and impermanence. The diorite stele will endure, but his mortal pulse will fade. Yet in each heart, guided by his code, his essence will echo, subtle and firm. As dusk descends on Babylon, torchlight flickers against mud brick walls beyond the courtyard. Hammurabi's silhouette merges with the stele's shadow, two carved forms bound by destiny. The rhythm of empire slows with the falling night, and the code's whisper lulls the city to calm. You can almost hear the gentle hush as families settle in their reed-thatched huts. Children nestle beneath woven blankets, murmuring bedtime verses drawn from the statutes. The motif of whisper of laws becomes a final comfort as sleep spreads across the land. Soon the only sound is the soft rustle of date palms swaying under starlight. In that tranquil moment, the boundary between carved stone and human heart dissolves. The legacy of Hammurabi stands both unyielding and intimate, a carved lullaby for civilization. And as you slip from wakefulness to rest, you carry the balance of carved stone within your dreams. The whisper of laws guides you gently toward the next story, waiting just beyond sleep's threshold. As we leave the carved eye for an eye clauses of Hammurabi's code behind, imagine yourself drawn toward a quieter mystery among the ruins of ancient Nineveh. The heat of midday sun warms dust motes that drift across the dig site, shimmering like tiny suns suspended in still air. You step along a narrow trench where crumbled walls half buried in sand reveal clues of a civilization long since faded. In that gentle hush, a whisper of clay calls out to be understood. Imagine yourself kneeling beside an excavation trench, fingertips brushing loose soil from the edge of a shallow depression. Below, a fragment of baked mud emerges in unexpected relief against the earth. The color is a muted amber gray, its surface etched with lines that form a pattern of wedge-shaped marks. That first glimpse of cuneiform feels like a secret invitation to a dialogue across millennia. You sense the tangible weight of history pressing softly into the curve of your palm. In the year 1853, Hormuzdrasam and his small team uncovered the most famous among these fragments, Tablet Ethi, while excavating the Kuyunjik mound north of Nineveh's ancient walls. Their tools were simple but precise: a narrow trowel, soft brushes fashioned from local reeds, and a shared reverence for every grain of clay. The air pulsed quietly with anticipation as each layer of soil surrendered its treasures. You can almost hear the hushed exclamations in their makeshift camp as someone gingerly lifted a larger shard. The shard was thicker than the others and bore a series of curved lines that hinted at a coherent narrative. Over the following days, more fragments surfaced, each brushstroke revealing the next wedge in an unfolding story. Imagine yourself watching the fragments accumulate on a wooden plank, arranged like pieces of an ancient puzzle. The summer breeze carried the scent of baked brick and crushed reeds, mingling with the soft scrape of brush on clay. When Rassam sent his findings to London, the fragments travelled by camel, boat and rail before arriving at the British Museum's portico steps. There, in a grand reading room with high ceilings and shafts of diffused light, scholars assembled around a table strewn with clay fragments. Imagine yourself in that hushed chamber, the gentle rustle of paper and the distant tick of a brass clock filling the space. The lead scholar, aided by an interpreter well-versed in ancient Semitic languages, began piecing together the lines of text. He spoke softly as he deciphered each symbol, his voice a measured cadence amid the soft echoes of turning pages. "He built a great vessel," he read. "Its length and width matched to the instructions of Enki." At that moment, you sensed the rush of water and the weight of obligation that guided Utnapishtim's hand. The tablet's text describes a god's warning whispered in dreams, a whisper carried on the wind like a secret. Imagine yourself drifting into Utnapishtim's world, where divinity reaches down from a silent sky. The narrative names the gods, Ea, also called Enki, who loved humanity and urged the survivor to build. The clay beneath your fingers seems to pulse as you read how the god revealed measurements for the boat, 6 decks in height, each deck 7 cornel beams wide. You feel the reverberation of hammer on wood, the smell of fresh-cut timber mingling with the damp of river clay. The text speaks of storehouses filled with seed and livestock, gathered to preserve every living thing. Imagine yourself hauling sacks of grain aboard that vessel, the coarse fibers rubbing against your calloused hands. The tablet shifts to describe the gathering of animals, beasts of burden and winged creatures alike, crowding the hold. You sense the low bellow of oxen and the soft coo of doves as they find their places among the provisions. The day the flood began, the sky darkened without wind, and thunder rolled like a distant drum. Imagine yourself standing on deck as the first drops of rain fall, their touch cold against sunburned skin. Waters rose swiftly, sweeping away the familiar contours of fields and pastures. Yet, Utnapishtim and his crew remained within the vessel's protective frame, suspended in a world of grey inundation. The tablet recounts that the flood lasted 6 days and 7 nights, a nearly unending hush of water and sky. On the 7th day, the winds stilled, and the sun appeared, illuminating a world cleansed in divine fury. Imagine yourself releasing a dove from the deck, watching it circle above endless waters before returning, its feet wet with the taste of salt and clay. 3 times Utnapishtim sends birds aloft, first the dove, then a swallow, then a raven, each flight carrying a message of hope. The raven does not return, and the hearts of those aboard swell with relief at the sight of dry land. You can almost feel the wood soften under your feet as the vessel settles on the summit of Mount Nimush. Oxygen tastes sweet as you step onto solid earth for the first time in days. The tablet describes Utnapishtim's offering of fragrant cedar and myrrh, smoke rising in delicate spirals against a pastel sky. The gods gather like silent witnesses, their presence felt in the hush that follows the sacrifice. "Rise up," Utnapishtim hears, "and speak to the people." Imagine yourself standing beside him, the breeze carrying the aroma of burning resin and the promise of new beginnings. The narrative then shifts toward immortality, for Utnapishtim and his wife are granted everlasting life as a reward for their faith and perseverance. You sense the weight of that promise in the stillness of the museum gallery, the tablet's clay glow under a soft lamp. Scholars paused often to trace lines with their fingertips, wary of the tablet's fragility. They compared its story with earlier flood narratives from Sumerian inscriptions at Nippur and Eridu. Each comparison deepened the mystery of why certain motifs endured across languages and cultures. You feel the subtle pull of that question as you lean close to the glass case. The motif of the divinely guided ark becomes a constant thread through Mesopotamian memory. Imagine yourself reflecting on the idea that what began as whispered instructions grew into a myth that outlived temple walls. The British Museum's curators painstakingly reassembled tablet Ephraim, filling gaps with small clay inserts where text was lost. Imagine yourself watching as they tuck fragments into place, aware of the careful balance between preservation and interpretation. The surface remains uneven in places, a testament to the tablet's long journey from buried ruin to display case. You sense the poem's resonance in every imperfection of its clay. The original Akkadian language sings faintly through scholarly translations, carrying both melody and meaning. Imagine yourself hearing that melody in the low hum of museum lights. Visitors pass by in slow procession, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Some pause to admire the tablet, others drift onward, drawn by different whispers of antiquity. And yet Tablet Elth continues to speak, its voice unhurried, its narrative deliberate. You feel the comfort of that deliberateness, a measured pace that invites contemplation rather than excitement. The motif of whispered clay and silent discovery repeats itself with each visitor. Imagine yourself leaving the gallery with your mind filled with the echo of water and words. The tablet's story remains with you, softly inscribed on the inner walls of memory. In the hush of departing footsteps, the clay seems to murmur one last verse. And so we close this chapter of excavation and revelation, carrying with us the story of Utnapishtim's survival. The whisper of Tablet X guides us onward as we prepare to explore how myth and memory entwine in the Epic of Gilgamesh. When you are ready, we will continue deeper into the currents of ancient storytelling. The silent dialogue between clay and scholar lingers long after you depart. Even in dreams, you might hear the soft scrape of reed brushes on ancient tablet faces. The motif of water, memory, and clay has woven itself into your thoughts. You sense the enduring power of whispered stories carried by wind and river. Imagine yourself carrying that quiet echo into tomorrow's dawn. This gentle current of discovery remains a balm to restless minds. And in that peaceful current, we rest before turning our attention to the tapestry of myth woven by Gilgamesh's epic. As the whisper of Tablet Ephraim gradually recedes, you turn your attention to a grander tapestry of myth inscribed across 12 tablets once housed in the library of Ashurbanipal. In that hushed library chamber, oil lamps stand in gentle rows along wooden shelves. Their flickering light reveals stacks of clay tablets bound by leather straps. Imagine yourself tracing your finger over a metal clasp as you open a dusty codex of newer fragments. The smell of leather and smoke drifts softly through the air. In quiet reverence, scholars arrange the 12 tablets in order. They speak in measured tones as they read the opening lines of the Epic of Gilgamesh. "He who saw the deep," one translator murmurs. "The country's foundation," he continues. The narrative summons you into a world where kings and gods cross paths beneath sunlit skies. You sense the distant echo of Utnapishtim's flood tale woven into the epic's midsection. The hero, Gilgamesh, reigns in Uruk, his walls towering like red gold cliffs at sunset. You picture those walls glowing in the soft haze of dawn dew. The cuneiform lines on the tablet map the hero's birth and his friendship with Enkidu. Imagine yourself reading how Enkidu emerges from the wilderness, sculpted by Aruru's hands. You can almost feel the rough fibers of animal hides that clothe him. The story moves with a steady rhythm, a constant struggle between mortality and longing. Gilgamesh delights in lively banquets, his laughter rumbling like distant thunder. The feast spreads across low tables carved from cedar, steaming bowls of broth and bundles of date-stuffed bread. You perceive the soft clink of clay cups as they toast to strength and companionship. Yet even amid warmth, a subtle melancholy pulses beneath the lines. The symbols for breath and life appear side by side on the clay, suggesting a fragile connection. When Enkidu falls ill, illness is named as a gift from the gods. Imagine yourself sensing the heaviness of that word, its weight settled on your chest. Gilgamesh mourns by the river's edge, his tears merging with the slow current. The tablet's script seems to ripple with grief when you read his lament. "Oh, my brother," the clay text seems to sigh, "how shall I live without you?" The translator hesitates, then continues to the next tablet. You lean closer as lines describe Gilgamesh's dream of a great stone axe. That dream spurs him to seek righteousness and purpose beyond mortal bounds. He decides to journey through the cedar forest, seeking Utnapishtim the faraway. Imagine yourself setting out at dawn, the forest's scent a mix of pine and damp earth. The rhythm of your footsteps on soft soil mirrors the hero's steady resolve. Along the path you hear the distant roar of Humbaba, guardian of the forest. Scholars pause to discuss the symbolic function of that roar. They note how myth and theology converge in the fearsome guardian's curse. Imagine yourself pausing at that point, letting the hush of reflection settle. The epic then shifts to describe the gods' jealousy and their roles as both guides and obstacles. Enlil, lord of wind and earth, appears with a gentle frown at their boldness. When the heroes slay Humbaba, the text conveys both triumph and cosmic imbalance. You sense the uneasy hush that follows divine backlash. The gradual build and release in the story mirror the rise and fall of the Euphrates. Later, when Gilgamesh rejects Ishtar's advances, her anger storms through the verses. You imagine the soft hiss of her fury carried on a desert wind. The gods debate whether to punish Enkidu or bring calamity upon Uruk. The epic's fluid language blends moral reflection with mythic grandeur. You feel the scholar's voice soften as they read of Enkidu's fate. "Enkidu, my friend," the clay whispers, "the wilderness claims you once more." In your mind's ear, you hear the chaos of divine deliberation. Yet the narrative remains calm, each symbol precisely carved. When Gilgamesh finally reaches Utnapishtim, he seeks the secret of eternal life. The themes of mortality and divine favor swirl through the text like eddies in a river. Scholars debate whether the epic's flood segment echoes a collective memory of real inundation. They point out parallels between the flood tablet and Gilgamesh's dialogue with Utnapishtim. Imagine yourself following Gilgamesh across dark waters in the epic's description. The poet's language evokes both awe and solemn reflection. "The waters rose like a wall," the translator reads, "and sky and earth became one." You sense the echo of that wall in your own memories of riverbanks reshaped by spring floods. The clay in your hand vibrates with ancient sorrow and hope. Scholars note the theological reflection embedded in the epic's portrayal of divine motives. The gods debate the balance between justice and compassion. Enlil's stern voice contrasts with Ea's gentle counsel to save humanity. You imagine those divine tones resonating beneath vaulted temple ceilings. The epic's myth and theology mingle like oil and water in a clay lamp. At times, the narrative pauses for vivid descriptions of scenes both familiar and surreal. Imagine yourself drifting through those scenes as though in a dream. The story names cedar forests, mountain winds, and the sea's endless horizon. You feel the crisp breeze of highland crags and the salt spray of rolling waves. Each image breathes life into the hero's arduous quest. When scholars read aloud, the lines possess a lullaby-like rhythm. The repeated motif of breath and utterance becomes a guidepost in the verses. "O house that builds you for eternity," one line reads, "your gate stands open to all." You sense the soft echo of that open gate in a gentle breeze. The epic-esque closure returns to Uruk-esque great walls and the hero-esque acceptance of mortality. Scholars pause to reflect on the cyclical structure of their own lives mirrored in the text. Imagine yourself breathing slowly as you consider your own earthly limits. The motif of echoes and whispers threads through each tablet you encounter. You feel the weight of words that have crossed thousands of years. In the hush of the reading room, the clay surfaces glow under the lamp's halo. As the final lines settle, you sense the comforting rhythm of completion. The epic invites you to contemplate both the fragility and persistence of life. You leave the chamber with your thoughts cradled in mythic reflection. The scholar's gentle voice still resonates in your memory. Outside, the wind sweeps across the plain of Khorsabad. You imagine that same wind once carried cuneiform dust across royal courts. The narrative of Gilgamesh remains a soft current beneath the city's modern hum. And now, as we prepare to explore the geological debates that anchor myth in memory, the rhythm of that soft current guides us forward. As the echo of Gilgamesh's epic fades from our ears, the whisper of clay invites us to examine the ground beneath our feet. Imagine yourself standing on the muddy banks of the Tigris River, where tall reeds sway in a gentle breeze. The river's surface reflects a lazy sun, and you sense the soft current of memory mingling with water's own current. Geologists and archaeologists often tread this same shoreline, trowels and coring drills in hand, seeking traces of ancient inundations. Their work begins with a simple question: could there have been a great flood around 2900 BCE, as some old traditions suggest? You feel the faint vibration of a mechanical coring auger as it drills into sediment layers, each rotation unspooling centuries of time. The smell of damp earth mingles with the metallic scent of equipment, creating an earthy perfume that lingers on your fingertips. A sediment core emerges, its colors arrayed in stripes of pale clay, dark silt, and organic, rich muck. Imagine yourself watching a researcher slice the core into discrete samples, each segment sealed in a clear plastic tube. The lamplight in the field tent reveals tiny flecks of shell and charcoal embedded in certain layers. Those flecks whisper of moments when water rushed across fields, carrying debris and leaving sudden deposits behind. Back in a quiet laboratory, the tubes stand in metal racks under soft fluorescent glows. You picture a lab technician drawing a careful map of pollen grains under a microscope, noting abrupt shifts in vegetation types. The change from reeds and wetland plants to upland grasses hints at a sudden surge of water followed by slower receding flows. Radiocarbon dating lines up those layers with a date roughly 2900 BCE, give or take a few decades. Imagine yourself reading the technician's notes, tracing the timeline from calm sedimentation to chaotic flood deposits. Yet such data often sparks debate among scholars who study the cradle of civilization. Some insist the soil evidence confirms a dramatic deluge that submerged river plains. Others counter that multiple smaller floods, woven together by oral tradition, inspired the legend. They argue that seasonal inundations in Mesopotamia could reach miles inland, especially after heavy spring melts. That gradual swelling year after year might have felt catastrophic to early farmers. They would have seen village walls collapse beneath swollen waters. Imagine yourself in a small farming settlement, watching levee breaches let torrents sweep away grain stores. The frantic scent of wet grain and rotting straw fills the air as fields are left submerged. Oral storytellers would carry news of those floods to distant towns, each retelling adding nuance and emotion. Over generations, the memory of multiple crises could crystallize into a singular, all-encompassing flood narrative. Yet physical evidence remains central to the argument. Core samples from the Shurapak excavation site reveal a thick, silty deposit sealing an ancient occupation layer. Archaeologists uncovered collapsed mud brick walls beneath that silty cap, suggesting a violent end to a city's prosperity. Shurapak AS ruins at Tel Farah bear a telltale layer of debris and alluvial silt dated to the late Ubaid period. Imagine yourself brushing aside that silty layer to expose charred timbers and broken ceramics. The remains evoke a moment when water and fire both claimed the settlement. Microscopic analysis confirms high levels of mineral-rich silt, typical of floodwaters laden with suspended particles. Chemical tests reveal traces of salt and minerals uncommon in typical river deposits. These clues point to floodwater that may have carried sediment from upstream marshes or distant tributaries. Yet some researchers caution against interpreting every thick silt layer as evidence of a single cataclysm. They note that natural variations in river flow can create similar deposits across decades. Imagine yourself listening to a seasoned geoarchaeologist explaining how river channels shift over centuries. They point to modern satellite images showing abandoned channels crisscrossing the plain. Floodwaters follow old channels before carving new paths, leaving a patchwork of wet and dry zones. That ever-changing landscape, they argue, feeds into the complexity of ancient flood tales. Still, other voices call for a middle way. They propose that a notably large flood around 2900 BCE, followed by decades of smaller events, gave rise to mythic proportions. Imagine yourself weighing these perspectives as you hold a piece of plainware pottery recovered from the flood layer. The pot's surface is rough, its grey-brown clay pitted by water's journey. You sense its history in every abrasion and crack. A paleobotanist might extract phytoliths, microscopic silica bodies, from that same clay to reveal local plant life before and after the flood. Their reports note a brief hiatus of cultivated barley pollen, suggesting fields lay waterlogged for a season. Imagine yourself inhaling the faint metallic tang of a lab where those pollen counts are tallied. The scent of treated glass slides and cleaning solvents blends with the hush of careful observation. Debate continues over the scale required for a flood to leave such marks across multiple sites. Did one great deluge sweep through all of Sumer, or did sequential inundations shape different regions at different times? Each theory carries weight in academic circles and resonates in the whispers of myth. Meanwhile, historians trace how these geological puzzles influenced cultural memory. They examine early Sumerian texts that mention floods washing over ziggurats and emptying canals. Lines from the Lament for recount how waters overran the sacred precincts like a ravenous beast. Imagine yourself reading that lament aloud, the words rising and falling like the river's own pulse. The illusion of a beast captures the flood's unpredictable fury without graphic detail. That image repeats the motif of chaos subdued by human ingenuity and divine mercy. Archaeologists also study pottery styles to see how communities rebuilt after disasters. They find jars with thicker walls and stronger rims designed to survive watery turmoil. Imagine yourself running your thumb along the rim of such a jar, noting its reinforced strength. That subtle adaptation speaks to resilience woven into daily life. Cultural geographers chart the spatial patterns of rebuilt villages, often clustering on higher ground. You sense the silent dialogue between human settlement and nature's caprices. That dialogue echoes the epic's interplay of divine decree and mortal action. Imagine yourself tracing your path across a raised tell, each step a negotiation with the land's memory. At length, the debate over a historical flood converges upon a nuanced understanding. Perhaps it was neither singular nor endless, but a series of surges remembered as one. And perhaps the very uncertainty became fertile soil for myth-making. Imagine yourself closing your eyes to picture spring rains swelling channels, the horizon melting into water. The motif of rising and receding water becomes a cycle reflecting both seasonal and existential renewal. Geologists, archaeologists, and storytellers each hold pieces of a puzzle that no single discipline can complete. The overlapping evidence, the silty core, the broken walls, the lamented verses, forms a mosaic of possibility. As you step away from the lab bench, the soft current of these debates ripples in your mind. You carry with you the sense that both earth and story are layered records of human experience. The motif of whispered sediment and quiet revelation repeats in every corner of this inquiry. In the hush that follows scientific exposition, the clay cores seem to murmur across centuries, and so we prepare to leave the laboratory as gentle glow and journey toward the celebrations that reaffirm Mesopotamia as cyclical bond with creation and chaos. Imagine yourself gathering with ancient worshippers at dawn, ready to honor a cosmic cycle that blends flood and feast. The soft current that carried us through geological time now guides us toward a festival of renewal. When you are ready, we will enter the heart of the Akitu festival and witness how myth and ritual intertwine in the city of Babylon. As you step from the lab's gentle glow into the morning light of Babylon's temple precinct, the air feels charged with anticipation. Imagine yourself crossing a wide causeway of weathered brick, the hush of dawn broken only by distant murmurs of waking priests. That same soft current of memory that carried us through sediment cores now carries the promise of celebration. Towers of mud brick ziggurats loom above, their stepped forms catching the first warm rays of sun. In the shadow of those ancient tiers, worshippers gather in silent reverence. A cool breeze stirs palm fronds, scattering motes of dust like tiny sparks in a golden haze. The festival of Akitu unfolds over 12 days each spring, marking renewal in the cycle of the seasons. Imagine yourself among the crowds, your heart beating in time with the rising sun. Priests in linen robes weave incense smoke through mosaic patterns on the ground. The scent of cedar and myrrh drifts across the courtyard like a soothing balm. Soft chants rise in unison, their low frequency a gentle vibration against your chest. You sense the motif of whispered clay and silent discovery repeated here as wordless presence. On the first day, a symbolic drama unfolds at the temple gate. A young acolyte carries a statuette of Marduk, the city's patron, in serene procession. His footsteps fall lightly on mosaic tiles, echoing like a heartbeat in the emptied plaza. Imagine yourself trailing that procession, the statuette's smooth surface cool against your palm. The figure of Marduk represents order, bringing forth the cosmos from primordial waters. Behind you, the crowd's breath mingles with the incense, a living chorus of faith. At the base of the ziggurat, the high priest stands with measured poise. He raises his hands, palm upward, to the emerging sun. A hush envelops the assembled crowd. Then, with deliberate slowness, he pronounces blessings that weave creation's myth into the present moment. The words flow like liquid clay shaped by divine intention. Imagine yourself hearing each syllable as a thread spun into the tapestry of time. In the following days, the rituals grow more elaborate. Actors don masks and costumes that echo mythic figures from the Enuma Elish. They represent gods and monsters whose struggle births the ordered world. As they enact the cosmic battle between Marduk and Tiamat, the drama unfolds with measured pacing. You feel the soft echo of waves and the quiet release of tension as each scene transitions. The roar of the crowd never rises above a murmured awe. Instead, a gentle rhythm persists, guiding you through each legendary moment. Imagine yourself seated on low cushions of woven reeds, the gentle scent of straw mixed with perfume. You close your eyes and let the performance wash over you like a lullaby. The motif of water and memory flows seamlessly through each enactment. Marduk strikes Tiamat's serpent form, and the clay stage seems to tremble underfoot. Yet the tremble is more felt than heard, a subtle reminder of creation's power. When the serpent's body splits, the actors move in slow motion, as if dancing on water. You sense the hush of anticipation that follows the mythic strike, like the calm after a storm. On the festival's midpoint, the narrative shifts from spectacle back to solemn ritual. The high priest leads a silent pilgrimage to the sacred lake beyond the city walls. Imagine yourself following that quiet march under an open sky. The lake's surface mirrors clouds and palm trees in muted reflection. In that stillness, the motif of calm water echoes through your mind. The pilgrims form a loose circle on the shore. They cast offerings of barley, dates, and reeds into the water. Each offering symbolizes the renewal of land, ruler, and people. You feel the gentle pop of floating seeds against the lake's glassy surface. A single lotus drifts toward you, its petals soft as a whispered secret. The scent of damp earth and fresh blossom mingles in the air. The high priest raises his voice only once, intoning a vow of kingship and renewal. His words blend with the breeze, scarcely louder than a breath. Imagine yourself inhaling that vow as if it were the first breath of spring. As the procession returns, the festival's pace remains measured and intimate. Children follow at their parents' heels, carrying baskets of flickering oil lamps. The lamps cast warm pools of light upon ancient stones. Shadows dance across the walls like silent witnesses to the past. In that glow, you sense the motif of whispered clay in each carved relief. On the dawn of the final day, the climax arrives in a ritual of sacrifice and renewal. A young bull, chosen for its strength and beauty, stands poised at the altar. Its coat is glossy, and its breath forms a faint mist in the cool morning air. Priests lead it forward with soft calls and soothing touches. You imagine yourself stroking the bull's flank, feeling the steady rhythm of its heartbeat. The crowd gathers in hushed solidarity around the altar. The high priest recites prayers that span from creation's first breath to the present hour. Each line is spoken with deliberate clarity, as if forging a bond between earth and sky. Imagine yourself absorbing those words, letting them settle into your mind like gentle echoes. When the moment arrives, the sacrifice is more symbolic than bloody. The bull's throat is touched, and a reverent silence descends. Instead of gore, the focus turns to the deity's renewed favor. You sense a release of tension as priests sprinkle bull's blood onto baked clay tablets. The tablets bear inscriptions of renewal and divine covenant. The smell of iron mingles with the scent of baking dust. In that sensory blend, you perceive the cycle of death and rebirth. The tablets are then carried to the temple's inner sanctum. Inside, incense coils burn low, their fumes curling like soft ribbons. The high priest places each tablet upon a low stone plinth. He steps back, palms raised once more toward the vaulted ceiling. A final chant rises, its cadence like waves lapping at riverbanks. You imagine yourself closing your eyes, letting the cadence lull you. The Akitu festival concludes with a feast of fruits, sweetbreads, and date wine. Laughter drifts under starry skies, mingling with the scent of roasting grains. The motif of celebration and calm repetition carries you through the night. As you drift from the temple precinct, the flicker of oil lamps dims behind you. In the soft echo of footsteps on ancient stone, you sense the continuing bond between myth and memory. The festival's gentle current guides you back to the rhythms of daily life. In dreams, you may recall the hushed chants, the fragrance of incense, and the taste of sweet date wine. And as you rest, the cycle of clay, water, and ritual weaves itself into your own narrative. When you awaken, you will carry with you the echoes of creation, chaos, and renewal. The motif of whispered traditions will linger like a soft lullaby at your ear. And in that lingering lullaby, the mystery of Mesopotamia's culture finds a gentle home in your heart. As the first light of dawn recedes over the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, the echoes of clay tablets, epic verses, and festival chants linger in the mind. We have traced the journey of tablet to feet from buried ruin to museum display, felt the soft hum of Gilgamesh's lament, and marveled at the interplay of myth and geology. Each whisper of clay, each layer of silt, and each breath of ritual has woven together a tapestry of human memory. In the hush that follows scholarly debate, one senses that Mesopotamia's stories are less static relics than living currents. The motif of water has carried us from the vessel of Utnapishtim to the rhythmic inundations recorded in sediment cores. The motif of whispered clay has guided us through reading rooms, laboratories, and temple courtyards. The motif of ritual repetition has connected us to generations of worshippers marking cycles of creation and renewal. Yet archaeology and culture are not separate threads, but strands braided into a single cord of heritage. Each fragment of pottery and each fragment of text resonates with both mundane lives and cosmic aspirations. In the rolling plains where reeds once bowed over riverbanks, communities rose and fell like the very waters they revered. The archaeologist, S-coring auger, and the priest, S-incense coil, share a common purpose: to bridge earth and story. Imagine yourself tracing those lines in the dirt, feeling the pulse of bygone seasons under your fingertip. You might sense the same thrill that stirred early excavators as they exposed a shard of unknown significance. Or you might feel the hush that falls over worshippers as they witness the high priest's solemn vow. Both moments are acts of translation, transforming material into meaning. They remind us that human beings do not simply survive natural events. They interpret them, enshrine them, retell them. Mesopotamia's flood narratives, once whispered in reed huts, eventually spoke across empires. The Epic of Gilgamesh adapted those narratives, framing them in a grand exploration of friendship, mortality, and divine will. The annual Akitu festival then wove those myths into civic identity, renewing kingship and cosmic order. In that ancient cycle of myth, memory, and feast, the concept of renewal took tangible form. A farmer planting barley seedlings after floodwaters receded felt the same hope as a king renewing his oath. A scholar deciphering a tablet felt kinship with a priest scattering barley into sacred waters. The soft current of tradition flows not only through texts and sites, but also through human hearts. It carries the weight of grief at loss and the promise of rebirth beyond disaster. It carries the steady rhythm of seasons, of sowing and reaping, of stone kilns and grain storehouses. Imagine yourself walking between temple columns and river tributaries, aware of that rhythm under every step. The calm repetition of ceremonies echoed the cyclic rise and fall of the Euphrates. The inscriptions on a clay cone echoed the very currents that shaped the land. Archaeology recovers those echoes, but culture sustains them in living practice. How many hands have touched the rim of a tablet bearing Utnapishtim's flood tale? How many lips have whispered Gilgamesh's lament beneath night skies? How many voices have risen in the quiet pledge of renewal at the Akitu festival? Each touch and each utterance deepens the bond between past and present. In museums, laboratories, and reconstructed temple precincts, we continue to touch and speak. The artifacts themselves seem to breathe with the weight of those countless engagements. You can almost hear them exhale stories into the hush of modern spaces. That breath is neither loud nor urgent, but gently insistent. It reminds us that human experience is always a dialogue with forces greater than ourselves. The flood did not simply destroy, it reformed both land and legend. The epic did not merely entertain, it provoked reflection on existence and divine favor. The festival did not just commemorate, it affirmed community's place in a cosmic order. Through excavation, translation, and celebration, Mesopotamians crafted their own continuity. That continuity shaped not only their own world, but echoes into ours. We study their tablets to learn about them, but we also learn about ourselves. We discover how our ancestors confronted uncertainty, loss, and the promise of renewal. We recognize our own rituals of reading, remembering, and reflecting in their rites. The motif of whispered clay whispers still to those who will listen. The motif of water flows through every flood myth and every seasonal rite. The motif of ritual repetition carries both memory and hope across generations. As we prepare to ascend into the palaces and priesthood of ancient Babylon, those motifs remain centered in our hearts. The elite terraces and temple courts we will explore in the next segment rest upon the same foundations of myth and memory. Their lavish feasts and political ceremonies echo the quieter rhythms we have traced here. The hanging gardens and sculpted reliefs were not only marvels of engineering, but also stages for reenacting cosmic harmony. The Ensi and the Lamassu did not merely assert authority, they embodied the intertwining of divine and mortal realms. Every carved figure and painted glaze carried symbolic weight rooted in flood and feast. Imagine yourself stepping from the muddy banks of the Tigris into marble-floored palace halls. The temperature shifts when you enter, from sun-baked air to cool interior shadows. You can smell polished wood and spiced oils where once you smelled wet earth and incense. The hush remains, though transformed from ritual chant to reverent awe. That hush reminds you that all life, elite and commoner alike, is bound by the currents of tradition. It reminds you that power and piety, clay and crown, belong to a single cultural stream. As you ascend stone stairs toward the throne room, you carry the echoes of flood and festival with you. Each footfall on worn steps resonates with stories older than the palace itself. Each relief carving displaying lamassu and lotus blossoms recalls both divine guardianship and natural cycles. You might pause to touch their carved eyes, feeling the smooth stone shaped by human hands. You might hear the faint drip of water from a ritual basin in the courtyard. That drip seems to recall the river's own drip, connecting garden to floodplain. You sense the motif of continuity in every decorative motif and architectural choice. In that continuity, you find the link between humble festival offerings and the grand spectacle of royal power. The same stories we traced in clay tablets shaped laws, kingships, and social hierarchies. They shaped jewelry, building materials, and daily attire with symbolic decoration. They shaped how citizens perceived their place beneath Marduk's protective gaze. Yet beneath the splendor, the river's cycles still determined sowing and harvest. Beneath the crown, human heart still sought reassurance against fear and loss. The interplay of myth and material remains a source of both comfort and inquiry. In the palace library, scribes copied flood narratives onto new tablets. In the ziggurat courtyards, priests repeated the call to cosmic renewal. In workshops along the Euphrates, potters crafted vessels that bore both utilitarian and symbolic value. Imagine yourself among those artisans, shaping clay with the same reverence displayed by later excavators. Each coil of clay on the potter S-wheel carried the memory of floods survived and festivals celebrated. As we close this chapter of mystery, archaeology, and culture, you carry with you the whisper of clay and the current of memory. You carry with you the rhythm of water and ritual that flows through human history. You carry with you the sense that every discovery, whether geological, textual, or ceremonial, joins in a single song of renewal. In your dreams, those motifs will likely reappear as gentle guides toward tomorrow's explorations. And now, when you are ready, we will leave behind the soft echoes of sediment and chant. We will step into the palace courts and temple terraces where elite and divine converge. The next segment will reveal how power and piety shaped the ruling classes of Babylon. It will show how kings used architecture, ritual, and spectacle to sustain the cosmic rhythms we have traced. The transition from the last segment flows gently as the echoes of the Akitu festival rituals fade behind the mud brick walls and the 12 days of creation ceremonies settle into memory. Now imagine yourself stepping beyond the crowded lanes where grain and fish sauce mingled, and into a world of carved stone and cultivated gardens. The rhythm of their lives shifts from the labors of commoners to the measured steps of those who held power. In this quiet passage, you move under an archway carved with serpentine motifs, each coil whispering stories of authority. The sense of touch becomes softer here, as the coarse texture of city streets gives way to polished limestone. A constant motif in the palace is the gleam of water trickling through channels hidden beneath marble slabs. Imagine yourself pausing to run a fingertip along a relief of Marduk's triumph, his silhouette raised against the wall like a silent sentinel. The reliefs themselves are painted in muted hues, now faded by time, but still resonant with deep ochre and lapis lazuli. The palace's walls bear the weight of history and ceremony in these images. Each relief tells of ceremonies performed in the name of the gods, a reminder that even the grandest terraces existed in service of divine kingship. You might notice flecks of pigment still clinging to carved lines, lending a ghost of color to scenes of triumph and trade. Imagine yourself tracing the curvature of a lion's mane in bas-relief, pausing at each engraved strand. The motif of lions recurs throughout these halls, a sign of royal strength and a lullaby of power. Beyond these walls, the hanging garden terraces unfold, one level above another, each an emerald sigh against the dusty horizon. The scent of fresh greenery drifts upward, a rarity in the baked landscape. You imagine yourself inhaling the delicate perfume of jasmine and date palm, balanced by hints of mint and hyssop. A constant motif emerges as you wander, the interplay of water and stone. Slender channels lead droplets through carved channels, the trickle echoing softly like distant prayers. Imagine yourself leaning over the edge of the terrace, watching silver threads of water spill into small basins carved of alabaster. The water glints in the morning light, a faint shimmer against the tesserae of tiled mosaics. The garden beds are lined with flowering shrubs and ornamental grasses whose leaves whisper in the gentle wind. A recurring phrase drifts through your mind, a cultivated refuge amidst the desert's relentless expanse. The terraces rise tier upon tier, each serving as a quiet retreat for royalty and priests. Sculpted urns hold the roots of papyrus reeds and flowering vines, their stems weaving patterns of shade across pale columns. Imagine yourself trailing a hand along the smooth rim of an urn, feeling the coolness of its stone against your palm. In this space, the motley scents of incense and damp earth converge. Fey incense, pressed in small cones, smoulders on bronze braziers, releasing a barely perceptible sweetness. Imagine yourself drawing in a soft breath, the fragrance dancing with the scent of freshly turned soil. The palace's gardens are not wild but ordered, each plant placed with intent. A constant motif here is symmetry, a reflection of cosmic harmony. Flower beds mirror one another on either side of polished paths, guiding the steps of those who wander. Imagine yourself walking these avenues, your footsteps soft against the mosaic floors. The mosaic patterns themselves carry symbols of the heavens and rivers, a reminder of the world beyond and below. Now consider the fabrics draped through the halls, fine wool robes woven from the rarest fleeces. These garments hang on carved wooden pegs, their fibers shimmering in the muted light. Imagine yourself touching the weave, feeling the gentle weight of wool carded to a silk-like softness. A recurring motif is luxury in simplicity, a balance between richness and restraint. The robes bear simple stripes of indigo and crimson, dyed with pigments reserved for the elite. Wool was prized not only for warmth, but for its connection to pastoral life and the fertility of the land. Imagine yourself brushing the fabric against your cheek, feeling the subtle warmth of the weave. The rhythmic pattern of stripes acts almost like a soft chant, each color a verse in the palace's silent hymn. As the morning sun arcs higher, light plays across the polished floors, illuminating the textures of stone and cloth. Imagine yourself standing in a corridor lit with slender windows, the sun painting golden ribbons across the walls. The motif of gold recurs here as well, in the gilded edges of wooden doors and the bronze fittings of sarcophagi. A constant undercurrent of the palace is opulence tempered by ritual. Ritual objects rest on low tables, small bowls of frankincense and trays of polished carnelian beads. Imagine yourself pausing by a table, noticing how the beads catch the light in tiny glimmers. The pattern of ritual sets the pace of palace life, each day unfolding according to ancestral commands. Imagine yourself standing in a silent chamber where the shadow of a lamassu stretches across the floor. This guardian spirit, part lion and part human, stares with carved eyes that seem almost alive. Though its presence will be explored more deeply later, here its silent watch lends a hushed solemnity. A recurring phrase returns, the watchful gaze of power. The palace itself becomes a stage where power is both performed and observed. Imagine yourself moving from one hall to the next, each space marked by subtle changes in decor. In one room, the walls are covered with scenes of harvests and river landscapes, painted in soft, earthen tones. Imagine yourself standing before a mural of reaped grain, the tall stalks bending under the weight of golden ears. The motif of the river persists, winding through fields of barley and lentils, connecting the palace to the land. In another chamber, you find depictions of royal hunts, animals depicted in graceful stride. Imagine yourself studying a painted gazelle frozen in mid-leap, its form captured in fluid lines. The motif of movement contrasts with the stillness of stone. Imagine yourself noting how the artists rendered the gazelle's muscles in subtle gradations of color. These reliefs were meant to remind the viewer of the king's dominion over both land and creature. The motif of dominion repeats, a soft hum under the grand surfaces. Imagine yourself drifting into a smaller antechamber where sunlight filters through latticed windows. The lattice casts geometric shadows across the floor, shifting with the passing hours. A constant motif of time emerges here, by the gradual dance of light and shadow. Imagine yourself following a shadow as it slides across the wall, tracing invisible lines in mid-air. The palace is not merely a residence, but a living chronicle of power, art, and devotion. Imagine yourself stepping toward a low divan where a figure might rest, dressed in fine robes. Though the figure is absent, you almost feel the impression of their presence in the cushions. A recurring phrase whispers, the weight of absence. In this space, material opulence coexists with the silent echoes of those who came before. Imagine yourself breathing in the hush, feeling the soft echo underfoot. The motif of echo returns again and again, reminding the listener of the palace's layered history. Imagine yourself pausing at a window, looking out over the fertile plains below. A ribbon of river snakes through green fields reaching toward distant horizons. The gardens and reliefs inside mirror that distant river, linking palace and plains in visual harmony. A constant motif of connection emerges, water, stone, and people bound together. Imagine yourself lingering a moment before turning back toward the heart of the palace. The transition forward awaits where the Ensi and Lamassu-guarded courts draw you into the next chapter. Imagine yourself stepping into a grand courtyard paved with polished basalt stones that glint softly under a pale sky. The rhythm of their lives carries you forward, each footstep a muted echo against the stone floor. Along either side of this broad way stand pairs of lamassu, their bodies carved from a single block of alabaster. Imagine yourself noticing the gentle curve of each wing, carved with meticulous feathers that seem to ripple in the light. The motif of guardianship surrounds you. These hybrid creatures keep watch with silent vigilance. Imagine yourself pausing before one lamassu, meeting its stone gaze that feels almost alive despite centuries of quiet. The motif of the watchful gaze returns, a reminder that power speaks in stillness. You feel the cool air brushing against your skin as you pass beneath the arch formed by outstretched wings. Imagine yourself tilting your head upward, tracing the carved tendrils of lotus blossoms along the arch's underside. A constant motif here is the intertwining of nature and authority. Beyond the arch, the palace walls rise in tiered layers, their surfaces lined with niches that once held offerings to gods and kings. Imagine yourself stepping closer to a niche, running your fingers gently over the remnants of red pigment still clinging to carved patterns. The motif of faded color whispers stories of past ceremonies. In this courtyard, the Ensi's presence hangs palpable in the air, even if his shape is absent. Imagine yourself breathing in the faint scent of frankincense carried on a light breeze. A recurring phrase drifts through your mind, the scent of power. Beneath your feet, the stones are arranged in geometric precision, each block a testament to planning and order. Imagine yourself crouching to trace the grid lines with a fingertip, feeling the slight indentations where craftsmanship met intention. The motif of symmetry emerges, order as a reflection of cosmic balance. Overhead, narrow slits in the upper walls allow shafts of sunlight to pierce the cool shadow below. Imagine yourself standing in a beam of light, watching tiny motes drift through the air like suspended stars. The motif of illumination returns, power highlighted by light's embrace. Along the right-hand side of the courtyard, a low bench of carved stone invites you to pause. Imagine yourself settling onto its smooth surface, feeling the gentle warmth absorbed by the basalt. A constant motif here is rest in the midst of ceremony. Across from you, a series of low doors lead into inner chambers where the Ensi conducted affairs of state. Imagine yourself rising and pushing one door ajar, finding yourself in a dimly lit antechamber. The motif of threshold repeats, each opening a gateway between worlds. Within, slender columns uphold a latticed ceiling, casting latticework shadows that shift as the sun moves. Imagine yourself following a shadow's progress along the stone floor, tracing its silent path. The motif of time returns, measured by light's flight. Along the walls of this antechamber hang tapestries woven from wool and goat hair. Imagine yourself reaching out to touch a tapestry, feeling its raised weft threads forming stylized patterns of palm fronds. A recurring motif arises, the interplay of texture and symbol. Above each tapestry, small bronze sconces hold oil lamps whose embers glow like distant embers in the dusk. Imagine yourself leaning closer to one lamp, inhaling the soft aroma of sesame oil. The motif of subdued light emerges, illumination guided by shadow. Beyond the antechamber lies the heart of power, the NC's council room, where decisions shape the lives of thousands. Imagine yourself stepping into this larger hall, where a long stone dais runs along the far wall. On this dais would have sat the NC, flanked by advisors and scribes. Imagine yourself running your hand along its carved edge, feeling the slight groove where tablets once rested. A constant motif here is the weight of words. Behind the dais, a broad mural depicts the NC receiving the blessings of the moon god Sin. Imagine yourself studying the mural S detail. The gentle crescent carved above the NC S head, its curve echoing the horns of the Lamassu outside. The motif of divine sanction intertwines with the watchful gaze of power. On either side of the dais, low tables held clay tablets sealed with cylinder stamp impressions. Imagine yourself leaning over one table, examining a tablet whose cuneiform lines still stand in crisp relief. A recurring motif is the permanence of record. The scribe's careful marks reach across centuries to speak to you now. Imagine yourself noting how each clay cylinder S seal impression carries a unique pattern of dots and lines. The motif of identity surfaces power wielded through inscription. Along the hall's length, niches hold thick volumes bound in linen wrappings containing correspondence with distant rulers. Imagine yourself opening one wrapping, inhaling a musty scent of aged fibers. A constant motif here is connection, the palace at the heart of wide networks. Beyond this hall, the visitor would approach a richly decorated vestibule where gates of bronze stood open only to the chosen few. Imagine yourself standing between those gates, aware of the hush beyond. The motif of exclusivity recurs, privilege defined by proximity. Within the vestibule, the frescoed walls gleam with scenes of tribute bearers kneeling before the NC. Imagine yourself picturing caravan trains of camels bringing lapis lazuli from distant mountains. The motif of resource flow emerges, linking city and frontier. Alongside these scenes, stylized palm trees rise skyward, their crowns shading pearl-white birds frozen in mid-song. Imagine yourself hearing an imagined trill of bird call, a quiet melody in stone. The motif of nature distilled into art returns. From here, a low flight of steps leads to an elevated platform where the NC would hold court. Imagine yourself descending those steps, feeling each tread worn smooth by countless sandals. A constant motif is passage, movement through thresholds of power. At the base of the platform, two smaller Lamassu stand guard, their bodies carved with scenes of the NC's triumphs. Imagine yourself drawing close to one guard, noting how the creature's face holds an expression of calm strength. The motif of guardianship echoes once more. Imagine yourself pausing in this sacred space, feeling the weight of centuries in the carved stone. The motif of silence falls like a soft veil, allowing only the whisper of memory to survive. Imagine yourself turning from the guards toward the heart of the courtyard again, the evening light pooling around the figures like a gentle halo. A final motif drifts through your mind, the enduring presence of power, shaped in stone, season, and ritual. Imagine yourself seated on a low divan in a broad reception hall where the walls glow with ochre pigments. The air carries a faint sweetness of fermenting fruit and toasted grains. Along the edge of the room, long wooden tables bristle with platters of roasted dormice glazed in honey and crushed sesame. You lean forward, inhaling the nutty aroma mingled with caramelized sweetness. Beside the dormice rests a shallow bowl of crushed pomegranate seeds, their ruby hue glinting like scattered gems. A servant pours date wine from a clay jug, its amber liquid catching the lamplight as it fills your small cup. You bring the rim to your lips, tasting the deep, mellow richness laced with notes of ripe fig. The warmth of the wine spreads through your chest as you settle back into the plush cushions. At the center of the hall, musicians pluck lyres with soft, unhurried strokes, their melody drifting like a lullaby. Their music is not meant to exhilarate, but to create an atmosphere of languid repose. Nearby, an attendant fans a small brazier of incense, sending curling tendrils of smoky myrrh in lazy spirals toward the vaulted ceiling. You breathe deeply, letting the scent drift through your awareness. On a low pedestal beside you, an alabaster bowl holds small cubes of salted cheese, each morsel creamy and faintly tangy. You taste one, feeling its soft texture dissolve on your tongue. A dish of spiced lentils, simmered with bits of scallion and coriander, rests between two supports carved with the likeness of a winged sun disk. You dip a piece of flatbread into the lentils, the coarse surface soaking up savory juices. The bread is baked thin with crisp edges that yield to your bite. Each chew is punctuated by the gentle resistance of grains that still retain their shape. Around you, other guests recline on cushioned mats, their colorful robes draped in relaxed folds. They converse in low tones about matters of state and harvest yields. At intervals, a messenger enters the hall to hand clay tablets sealed with red wax, bearing news of trade caravans arriving from the north. The hall remains hushed, as though the weight of information bears down upon each listener. From beside a carved wooden screen, a pair of priests step forward carrying trays of small silver bowls. Each bowl holds an offering of crushed saffron mixed with clarified butter and honey. These sweet offerings are reserved for Ishtar, goddess of love and war. You watch as the priests sprinkle the mixture onto coals in a larger brazier, where it hisses and pops, releasing a heady fragrance that fills the chamber. The fragrance is warm and sultry, like the embrace of dusk itself. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the scent carry you to distant memories of twilight skies. When you open them, the priests have placed small statues of the goddess on a raised dais. Her figure, carved in dark basalt, stands with one hand raised in blessing. The figure's eyes are painted white, giving her a gaze that seems to follow each guest. The priests bow and step back, their movements deliberate and reverent. You feel the hush deepen, as though the hall itself is waiting. A young attendant glides forward with a slender reed, gently tapping on a clay jar filled with water. The sound is soft, rhythmic, like the murmur of a distant river. With each tap, the assembled diners pause, their attention shifting. The priests lift their hands in unison and recite a chant, in the ancient tongue, their voices blending into a single, low tone. The chant praises Ishtar as dual nature, her fierce protection of the city and her tender gift of fertility. You do not understand every word, but you sense its power in the resonance of their voices. When the chant concludes, the priests lift bowls of cooled wine and pour a small amount at the statue's feet. The liquid spreads across the dais, darkening the stone. You watch it pool, then drip slowly through a carved channel into a hidden reservoir below. The gesture feels intimate and secret, as though you are witnessing a private communion. A hush follows, broken only by the soft footfalls of attendants collecting empty dishes. The musicians resume their slow melody, and conversation ripples back through the hall. You lift your cup again, the wine now tasting of smoke and honey. You take a small piece of fruit, an early summer fig, its flesh soft and warm. As you eat, you gaze around at the diners' faces illuminated by the flicker of oil lamps set in bronze holders shaped like lotus flowers. Their features shine with contentment, and you sense an atmosphere of ease and abundance. Outside, through tall lattice windows, the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the sky in tones of rose and lavender. You feel the day's duties slip away with each passing note of the lyre. The banquet continues with platters of grilled river fish, seasoned with wild herbs and lemon rind. The fish's skin crackles under a delicate crust of salt, and its flesh flakes softly at your touch. Beside the fish, bowls hold boiled chickpeas tossed in pungent garlic oil. You taste one, its firm texture contrasting with the soft flesh of the fish. A runner brings a tray of roasted grapes, their skins split to reveal sweet juice that glistens on your fingertips. You press the juice to your lips, savoring its sharp sweetness. In a quieter corner, scribes record the day's offerings on fresh tablets, using reed pens soaked in black ink. Their swift, practiced strokes glide across the clay surface. You lean in to observe the marks, each wedge marking a new detail of the feast. The scribes speak in hushed tones about upcoming festivals and guest lists yet to be finalized. You listen as one mentions the next dedication to Marduk, scheduled for the height of summer when the temple steps will be lined with banners. The thought of another gathering echoes in your mind, a reminder that ceremony shapes every facet of elite life. A final course arrives, platters of sweetened, spiced dates rolled in crushed pistachios. The dates yield under your teeth, their rich sweetness tempered by a gentle crunch. You close your eyes and let the flavors wash over you. The last light slips beneath the horizon, and a hush settles once more. You realize that for these elites, every sense has its appointed ritual, from taste to scent to sight, each designed to reaffirm status and divine favor. With a contented sigh, you lean back and let the music carry you toward a gentle quiet. And as you rest there, the memory of this banquet lingers like the faintest perfume, drawing you deeper into the palace's timeless embrace. Imagine yourself standing at the foot of the great ziggurat before dawn, the sky still paling beneath the first light. A soft murmur drifts from the city as servants stir torches and incense burners. You feel the cool stone beneath your feet, carved with shallow channels meant to guide offerings upward. The air carries a faint scent of burning cedar mixed with early morning mist. A steady rhythm pulses through the plaza as drummers arrive, their skins taut and ready. Imagine yourself lifting your chin to listen as the first low beat sounds, resonating against the stepped walls. Faint cries of trumpeters echo from atop the ziggurat, their brass horns gleaming in the emerging light. A hush falls as the horn calls out, summoning the people to gather. You notice the crowd assembling at the base, commoners in simple tunics and women in linen shifts, all moving in unison toward the rising structure. Imagine yourself weaving through groups of laborers and artisans placing wooden scaffolds for the festival's seating. Above you, the stepped levels of the ziggurat form a tiered stage, each landing lined with alabaster pillars. Lanterns dangle from carved hooks, waiting to be lit later against the evening sky. The drumming grows louder, a slow pulse that seems to echo the heartbeat of the city itself. Imagine yourself breathing in the smoke from the incense burners, its sweetness mingling with the earthy scent of damp stone. A procession emerges through an arched gateway, priests in dark robes bearing ornate standards tipped with gold and lapis lazuli. You hear the soft jingle of beads sewn into their sashes as they move forward. Imagine yourself stepping back as they pass, the flicker of torchlight dancing across their faces. Behind them come the palace guard, figures in polished bronze helmets and scale armor, their shields carved with the king's emblem. You catch a glimpse of the Ensi himself, seated in a richly decorated litter, carried by 4 men. Imagine yourself following the litter as it ascends the first flight of steps, each tread sounding hollow under the weight of authority. The people bow their heads in deference, and a hush falls once more. As the procession reaches the first landing, the Ensi is lowered onto a platform draped in woven tapestries depicting scenes of past festivals. You smell the faint tang of goat hair and dye. Imagine yourself watching as the Ensi stands, his robe of crimson wool falling in precise folds around his feet. He raises his arms to the crowd, and a single trumpet blast follows, stirring the assembly into a chant of praise. You join in, voicing the ancient words passed down through generations. The chant swells, filling the air with a sense of shared purpose. A line of temple attendants steps forward, bearing small earthen bowls filled with barley gruel and honey. Imagine yourself taking one, the mixture warm and surprisingly sweet beneath your tongue. The crowd eats in silence, each mouthful a reminder of the god's bounty and the Ensi's generosity. Once the bowls are emptied, they are returned and reset for another wave. Above, on the next tier, musicians strike lyres and drums in a gentle counterpoint to the chants below. Imagine yourself tracing the interplay of sound rising and sinking through the terraces. The percussion patterns shift, urging the crowd's pulse ever higher. At intervals, the Ensi pours libations of date wine onto a stone altar carved with the image of Marduk's dragon. You feel the liquid's heat radiate from the altar as it hisses on the stone. Imagine yourself leaning forward to see the etched representations of past victories glowing in the torchlight. Once the libations conclude, the Ensi steps aside for the high priest, who holds aloft a stylized reed tablet engraved with the festival's calendar. The priest reads aloud, his voice steadier than you expect, guiding the people through the rites to come. Imagine yourself following along as the crowd murmurs assent at each declaration. From the upper terraces, servants release caged pigeons in flocks that wheel overhead, their cooing wings stirring the morning air. You notice how the birds spiral upward, disappearing against the brightening sky. Imagine yourself tracing one as it catches a shaft of light, its white feathers glowing. The enfolding cry of the pigeons seems to mark a shift. The formal ceremony transitions into performance. On the lower terrace, a troupe of dancers emerges, clad in bell-adorned belts and painted masks shaped like river creatures. Imagine yourself stepping closer to watch their movements, slow, deliberate undulations that mimic waves. The bells on their belts jingle in time with each step. Around them, drummers switch to a livelier rhythm, their beats urging the dancers to higher arcs. You feel the energy ripple through the plaza, a shared exhalation of joy and reverence. Imagine yourself allowing the dance to wash over you, your own shoulders relaxing against the day's tension. Once the dance ends, the dancers arrange themselves in a circle, and the crowd moves closer to form a ring. Imagine yourself stepping to the edge, the scent of warm sand rising from the plaza floor. A child offers you a small clay token, stamped with the festival's symbol, a gesture meant to bind commoner and court in this shared moment. You accept it, feeling the cool clay against your palm. On the next landing, attendants carry plates of sweetmeats, dates infused with pomegranate juice and pressed into delicate shapes. Imagine yourself tasting one, its richness lingering on your tongue, a gentle sweetness that grounds you in this moment. The ceremony resumes with a sung prayer, honoring the Lamassu, asking for protection over both palace and street. Imagine yourself bowing your head as the voices rise in unison. After the prayer, the NC returns to his litter, and the crowd parts to let him descend. You watch him move slowly down the steps, his image mirrored in the collective gaze of the populace. The procession winds its way from the ziggurat toward the temple courts, where more offerings and performances await. You step back into the flow of people, carrying the memory of this festival's unity and power with you. The drumming fades behind you, but its echo remains in your chest, a steady reminder of the bond between ruler and ruled. Imagine yourself gathered once more beneath the rising tiers of the ziggurat as the late afternoon light softens the stone S-edges. You notice how the crowd's movements have become more deliberate, as though each breath and gesture is part of a larger pattern unseen by most. Above, the NC's standard waves lightly in the breeze, a silent emblem that holds both reassurance and restraint. The air is thick with the scent of spiced oil and warmed clay, mingling with the distant echo of lyres. Everywhere you look, faces turn upward at the sight of priests carrying trays of votive offerings. The offerings themselves, miniature loaves of bread, small figurines molded in clay, and bowls of palm sap, represent both piety and obligation. You sense that each gift strengthens the bond between ruler and people, even as it reminds them of their place in the city's hierarchy. A hush descends as attendants place a golden chalice on a low altar carved into the ziggurat S base. The chalice gleams with the image of a stylized sun disk, its surface reflecting the fading light. You lean forward, watching as the Ensi steps forward to pour a libation of honeyed wine into the chalice's brim. The wine spills over the edge in a slow, deliberate stream, seeping into the carved grooves like a silent testament to divine favor. Around the altar, soldiers in linen tunics stand at attention, their spears tipped with bronze that glints even in shadow. You realize that their presence is both ceremonial and cautionary, a reminder that order is maintained not simply by faith, but by force. As the libation drips into the grooves, the Ensi raises his hands in a gesture mirrored by the crowd. You feel a wave of collective energy pulse through the assembled masses, as though their unified posture itself were a form of worship. In that moment, you understand how ritual binds individual will to the state's broader design. The chant that follows is neither loud nor raucous, rather it rises in a steady cadence, voices merging into a single voice that fills the plaza. You join in, your own words flowing with the tide of humanity around you. Even those who cannot speak the words know the movements by heart, a testament to the rite's power to unite. As the chant settles, a pair of high priests step forward bearing scrolls of finely embossed parchment. These scrolls list the names of families who have contributed most generously to the temple's upkeep and the palace's stores. You watch as attendants read each name aloud, their voices clear and measured. With every name uttered, a ripple of applause passes through the crowd, a ritualized acknowledgement of elite generosity. You sense how this public recognition reinforces social bonds, tolerating inequality while offering honor in return. A tray of small clay seals is then presented to the Ensi, each stamped with the insignia of a city district. You watch as he hands a seal to a district elder, who presses it into a moist clay tablet. This act both symbolizes and enforces the official connection between center and periphery. You feel the weight of that simple cylinder pressed into your mind, imprinting the idea that every corner of the realm answers back to this very place. The afternoon sun dips lower, and the shadows stretch across the stone steps. Lanterns are lit along the terraces, their flames flickering against painted reliefs of past victories. You notice how each painted scene serves as a visual reminder of history, sanctioned by the court. These images celebrate conquest and diplomacy alike, each brushstroke reinforcing the narrative of legitimate rule. As evening approaches, trays of roasted bird and honeyed dates pass through the ranks of attendants. You taste the tender meat of quail seasoned with coriander and nigella seeds, each bite combining flavor with unspoken hierarchy. Nearby, children of elite families accompany their elders, their laughter subdued in respect for the solemnity of the festival. Even their joy seems framed by the rituals that surround it. The NC's voice then rises above the muted hum as he offers a benediction, not only to the gods but to the assembled people. His words blend ancient formula and heartfelt gratitude, ensuring that each listener feels both blessed and beholden. You sense that this delicate balance of reward and obligation lies at the heart of elite power. With the benediction concluded, the crowd disperses slowly, each person carrying in their hands a small token, perhaps a clay token stamped with the NZ's seal. or a sprig of sacred reed. You hold your own token lightly, aware that it is both souvenir and symbol. The torchlight flickers as you make your way down the steps, the final strains of a harp echoing through the hush. You pass Lamassu guardians whose carved faces seem gentler now under the dancing flames. At the base of the ziggurat, the air cools noticeably, carrying the scent of evening dew. You pause to look back at the towering structure, its tiers now shadowed, but still imposing. In that moment, you understand that the festival has woven the common and the court into a single tapestry of ritual, law, and memory. Each act, from libation to naming, from gift to seal, has served to tighten the unseen threads that bind every resident to the NZ's authority. As you step away into the deepening twilight, the ziggurat stands silent behind you, a stone witness to the power that shaped an empire. If you haven't yet drifted into sleep, leave a comment so I know who stayed awake longer than I have. May the echoes of ancient rites guide you gently toward rest, and may the hard stone and sweet libations of Babylon's court find a quiet home in your dreams. Sleep well, and let the past's gentle rhythms carry you through the night.